If Miquella has divested himself of all things golden, that must mean the Land of Shadow is... Oh, I didn't see you there. How did you get into my tower? Ah, no matter. Tarnished, aren't you? Then I know exactly why you're here. You're hungry for knowledge. You're a seeker of truth. Why else would you be here, right now, holding audience with the illustrious Carian preceptor of history and lore, Jacobus Mimicus? Unfortunately, I'm still doing all of my research on the Land of Shadow. But how about I tell you a story? Don't fret, I will still tell you the history of the lands between and the people who inhabit it. Because if you don't know the lore, how will you understand the story? You may have seen my first astral projection, the Eclipse, Miquella's secret crime. This story will be a direct continuation of that story. If you don't recall, it followed the tale of the last Tarnished who arrived in the lands between, the Black Swordsman. And it followed him as he attempted to uncover Miquella's interest in the Eclipse. In the end, he deduced that it was Miquella who truly orchestrated the Night of the Black Knives with the express goal of creating Deathroot. If you're interested on how he came to that conclusion, I recommend watching that video or astral projection. He also learned the recipe for bewitching branches, the only recipe to use Miquella's lily, and with that, he began to unravel. He also saw a vision where Torrent, the spectral steed, the steed that chose the Black Swordsman, in a field of wheat and ghost graves, and on his back, his former master, Miquella. This story will pick up exactly where that one left off. Now, this is a story about a Tarnished, one of the many Tarnished who have walked through the lands between. It's a story you've probably heard before. You may have even walked the same path as this Tarnished. This is a story about the human heart in conflict with itself. A game of cardinal sin, Miquella's Masterplan.
Lord of frenzied flame, I will seek you as far as you may travel. To deliver you what is yours. Destined death.
And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
The round table hold was practically empty. Very few tarnished were left. Echoes of champions reverberated through the halls, but not one could be found. The Black Swordsman gazed into the clouded mirror. A stranger stood on the other side, staring back at him. With the recipe for the bewitching branch, the Black Swordsman didn't know what to think. He didn't know who he could trust. He was chosen by Torrent, chosen by Miquella's former steed. And for what? Why? If Miquella could have had a hand in the Night of the Black Knives, if he was involved in breaking the world, where did the Black Swordsman fit into it all? He didn't even know who he was before he reached the Lands Between. The life that he had before he was blessed by grace. He wore black iron armor, thinly painted with blood, and carried a coarse iron lump he called a great sword, and those were what made him the Black Swordsman. Beneath that was nothing but flesh and bone, and nothing, a nobody. As the reflection looked back at him, the first words of grace echoed in his mind. Stand before the Elden Ring, and become the Elden Lord. To confront Miquella at the base of the Halig Tree, he needed to know who he was, what was his purpose, and why was he chosen. So he put on his black iron armor, and he carried a coarse iron lump, and set off. He would return to the beginning. He would start back and retrace his journey. With fresh eyes, he would see the truth. Chapter 1. The Tears of Spirits. His first memories, his only memories before arriving, were of a dark void, a faint warmth filling his palm, and then a bright light consuming him. As he stood, the memory of first grace filled his mind. It is merely a cycle. Stand before the Elden Ring. Become the Elden Lord. This is where he awoke, in a chapel built in anticipation of a newly arriving tarnished. Light fell through the broken ceiling to the overgrown and abandoned place of worship. A statue of a woman reached out her arm, as if to bless those beneath her. He wore the garb of a two-fingered confessor, black leather armor for blending into the darkness, a dyed hood and cloak to conceal his identity, a relic of the life he must have lived before arriving in the Lands Between, as an assassin for his faith. No, that wasn't right. He was wearing the armor he wore now, black iron armor thinly painted with dried blood, and a coarse lump of iron affixed to his back. Those were what made him the Black Swordsman. He was a man of little faith. Actions spoke louder than words to him. To the right of the room, slouched on the ground, was the body of a woman meant to greet him. Still there, still waiting, bent in a pool of her own blood. She was a finger maiden, dressed in plain robes, awaiting for her chosen tarnish so she may share guidance, by reminding the newly arrived with the teachings of her religion, that of the two fingers. Sprawled on the floor in front of her was a message. Though the path be broken and uncertain, claim your place as Elden Lord. Although dead, she still tried to offer guidance. On her lap was a finger of corpse wax, so emaciated that the bone was visible. A tarnished finger, a relic of those who came before, left to help those who would come after. With this, messages could be found written on the ground by hand from other tarnished. Words are gregarious things, drawn to one another much as people are. Outside, the land appeared shattered, but through the haze he could see Stormvale Castle and the glow of the distant Erd Tree. The Black Swordsman squinted as the wind blew dust into his eyes and gazed up towards the massive statue depicting an Erd Tree Knight of Leyndell, its imposing presence representing the power of the far-off capital. Ahead of him was what appeared to be an old and untended graveyard, the ground on the western side falling into the sea, the walls decorated with ornamentation of Sarash, the king of beasts, as well as the Stormhawks of Stormvale. Newly constructed statues stood in front of these walls, a hooded man holding a sword, the second Elden Lord, Radagon. In the center of the graveyard was a massive relief of the ancient Erd Tree, its leaves and roots wild and grasping. Erdtree warriors who conquered these fringe lands were buried in this collapsing grave. And above him, ever present and always watching, was a statue of the eternal Queen Marika, her arms spread wide and above her head, as if to welcome the Black Swordsman. She towered over him and made him feel small and insignificant. So gracious was she that her feet would not touch the ground we all walk. When he first approached the graveyard, a dreg of the golden lineage, a young noble who had resorted to grafting the arms and limbs of the tarnished, had ambushed him. Seeking power and purpose in the past, he was adorned with gilded weapons, clothes, and jewels, their old crest engraved on his shield. He was here to take a piece of the Black Swordsman for himself, or for his liege lord, Godric the Golden. The Black Swordsman sheathed his katana. He would employ a skill from his home, the Land of Reeds, and perform a stance-breaking slash attack. As the grafted scion approached, his grip tightened and the blade flashed like starlight. No, he took his massive slab of iron and slammed it into the contorted body of stolen flesh, ending its miserable life. What was that? The Black Swordsman wondered. That memory. It wasn't me, was it? Further on was a cluttering of graves, more of the ground giving way to the ocean, a clear sign he should have watched his footing. Amongst the graves were the innately arcane nascent butterflies with their translucent wings. For their entire lives, they appear as if they just emerged from their cocoons. He knew now what those butterflies meant. Miquella. Across a rickety bridge, at the end of the path, was the site of the Black Swordsman's first death in the lands between. The innately arcane wings fluttered ahead. Only a fool would die chasing butterflies, he said to himself. This was where his body washed up. He should have died in this gravesite, he thought. The steed leaned down low and breathed in the scent of the Black Swordsman, snorted and shook his bridle. The hooded woman on Torrent's back talked of fortune.
Don't worry, Torrent. Fortune is on his side. We found him here, after all.
Talked of violating the Golden Order.
One of his kind is sure to seek the Elden Ring. Even if it does violate the Golden Order.
When the Black Swordsman awoke, 2 flasks were by his side, golden chalices of crimson and cerulean tears, the tears of life. They offered its gift of rejuvenation, allowing the Black Swordsman the strength to continue. Now, to the Black Swordsman, his fortune seemed planned. Across the room was an illusory tree missing its golden seed, the seeds that flew from the Erdtree when the Elden Ring was shattered. Convenient that one was able to make it here, underground. Before the Black Swordsman left the stranded gravesite, he glanced back. The ghost of a man sat in a chair. Did he know he was already dead? Outside of the grave was where the Black Swordsman was met by his first friendly face. He wore a blood-stained, faintly grinning mask. His words dripped out like honey and poison. The white mask wore the gown of a war surgeon, but he was no healer. During the shattering, field surgeons would come to the aid of friend and foe alike and thrust a dagger deep into their hearts, to spare them from the prolonged agony of a mortal wound. That sense of mercy would be the catalyst for their bloodlust. The white mask sounded absolutely delighted in the fact that the Black Swordsman was maidenless, so he could offer his own guidance and point him down a path of blood and death. Was the Finger Maiden in agony? Was that why he did it? But Torrent's Chosen wouldn't need the assistance of a Finger Maiden, or the White Mask, when she was available. She wore light, yet sturdy traveling clothes, a green cloak draped over her shoulders, held together by a brooch clasped beneath her neck. Her right eye was a stunning shade of Grace's gold, yet her other eye was shut, the talons of a death bird clawing it closed. She looked so familiar. She said she could perform the role of a maiden, turning rune fragments into strength by sharing his thoughts, his ambitions, the principles he would follow. She could use pieces of the Elden Ring and rewrite who he was, make him stronger, make him faster, make him better, make him fit to be Lord. But only on one condition, that he would take her to the foot of the Erd Tree. But this accord was built on a lie. She was no maiden. She had lost her purpose long ago, burned and bodiless as she was. The Black Swordsman would forgive her, though, and began to like her, his traveling companion. This was a dangerous place, and with the power that she offered, it was understandable why she would hesitate with honesty. For most of their travels, she would fade away and dissipate into a haze like stardust. But she was always present, always watching. Both of them would set off into the world to confront their fates, together. But they would not do it alone. She would bequeath him a ring, a delicate gold-work ring that could be used as a finger whistle. The sweet sound of the whistle would summon a spectral steed, the steed that chose the Black Swordsman in the stranded gravesite, Torrent, Miquella's envoy, and the Black Swordsman's ally. No matter what danger faced them, no matter what he would do, no matter where he would go, Torrent would always be there when he blew into the whistle. This ring of gold was proof enough that Miquella wanted something from him. But what that was, he did not know. The Black Swordsman returned, on horseback, to the yellow-eyed merchant. He was of a nomadic people, and wore their customary finery, decorated with tiny gems and a wide spectrum of colors. For a time, his people thrived as the Great Caravan, one of the largest ethnic minority groups in the lands between, a people who had no nation and owned no land. A vicious rumor was spread about them, that they were practitioners of beliefs deemed heretical under the Erd Tree. For this, they were gravely punished, and now you would never see two of them in the same place. Their eyes, all the same bright yellow, the same agony and anguish shared by a people crushed under the harsh rule of an empire. The golden grace of the Erd Tree did not bring blessings to all, it seemed. But the merchant was fast asleep as a faint purple mist spread across the Church of El, and the moon hung high in the sky. These were the mists of slumber, the gift granted by Saint Trina. An enigmatic figure. Some said she was a comely young girl. Others were sure he was a boy. The only certainty is that their appearance was as sudden as their disappearance, as if waking up from a dream. In a land deprived of death and full of pain, many became utterly captivated by Saint Trina and would continue to search for her in their slumber, and only in their slumber. The symbol of their faith was a pale purple water lily that was on the verge of wilting. When grounded down with a mushroom base, a concoction could be crafted that would dull the senses, prevent agitation, and like a lullaby or a quagmire, draw the user into a deep sleep. Thus they would search, to see Saint Trina again, to find her in their dreams. Trina's lily were incredibly similar to Miquella's lily in appearance, the flower that signified faith in the Haligtree and thought to be beloved by the young Empyrean. When the Black Swordsman received the Fervor's cookbook with the recipe for the bewitching branches, the only recipe to use Miquella's lily, he knew then that Saint Trina and Miquella were one and the same. Maybe this is how Miquella was able to gain the love of so many people, by masquerading as the Saint of Sleep and bewitching people with dreams. The mist here did not originate from Miquella, though, but from Lunar Princess Rani in the guise of her secret mentor, Renna the Witch. No doubt she learned this trick from her half-brother. This was the Black Swordsman's first interaction with Rani, and though he would go on to become one of her champions and investigate her part in the Night of the Black Knives, the Eclipse, this meeting may have been the most important. She had heard tell of a tarnished hurtling atop a spectral steed, and was entrusted with a bell for calling forth spirits by Torrent's former master, Miquella. When near a rebirth monument, the Black Swordsman could ring the bell, and the ash in his possession would beckon the spirits that dwelled within as they recalled battles past. They would fight for him. The dead would be his ally. Burned and bodiless, one spirit gave the Black Swordsman the power to turn runes into strength and the whistle that could summon Torrent. Possessing a doll, another gifted a bell to call forth spirits from ashen remains unreturned to the Erdtree. It seemed Miquella had an interest in spirits and utilized them in his advantage. Neither of these women seemed to be aware of each other, yet each of them played their part in assisting Torrent's chosen. He thought back to his time with Ranni the Witch. She was a doll fighting against a hand for control over her own fate, over her own destiny, though the price she paid was high, for her and for those around her. When Rennala lost her only daughter, the pride of Caria, she was shattered. The world as she knew it had ended, and so did she. Her husband, Radagon, gifted her an amber egg to ease her pain. It housed a great rune of exceptional power, the power to be born again, the power of rebirth. Rebirth was as sleep to her, and with each awakening, Rennala faded into oblivion. The Black Swordsman thought back to that amber egg. He thought back to the gratitude that Radagon had for his son, Miquella. Which tree did that amber come from? The Black Swordsman wondered. In spite of all that, Ranni the Witch was determined to make her fate her own, and the Black Swordsman envied her. Was that why he fought for her? Why he shed blood for her? So he could make her fate his own? It didn't matter. He still had the Dark Moon ring in his possession. His mind was not made up yet on the Lunar Princess. Up above in Stormhill stood an empty shack, a shelter from the winds, the echoes of the tempest from when the true storm raged. There was a crestfallen girl, huddled on the ground wearing a hooded cloak of vivid crimson. She was an expatriated royal from outside the Lands Between, when royal families had children to spare, or people to get rid of. They would be sent out on ships to faraway lands from which they would never return. The gift of a cloak made it easier for undesirables to be on their way. She was a tarnished, like the Black Swordsman, but she did not see the guidance of grace, and neither did her men. Everyone she had journeyed with, the honor-bound from lesser houses or sell swords paid far too little, had all been grafted, collected by tarnish hunters and mutilated on the orders of the demigod Godric the Golden. Their limbs removed and combined so that he may mimic the first tarnished, Elden Lord Godfrey. She was craven, and did not want to continue on her journey, but she bequeathed a gift to the Black Swordsman. She had told them that the spirits looked fondly upon him, and gifted him the ashes of a spirit jellyfish. These were spirits that were commonly found floating above sacred grounds to the Lands Between. This jellyfish, however, was prone to tears. He did not realize that spirits could feel pain. At least they had something in common. The crestfallen girl also had a request. That
on a message for me. If you see the little chrysalids in Stormvale Castle, tell them I love them. And that, despite my craven heart, I'm sure I'll be joining their club soon enough.
He didn't know what she meant by that. Chrysalids were cocoons for butterflies. Later he realized. He had found a memento left by her men on a pile of mutilated corpses within the castle, and dancing around a brooch wrapped in red velvet, faintly visible spirits were trying to convey something, but the Black Swordsman could not hear their voices. When he returned this keepsake to the crestfallen girl, it was as if the spirits were speaking to her. They told her they believed in her, that she would make something of herself. It was inspiring to see, that someone so lost could regain their strength and push on. With the spirits by her side, she wasn't alone anymore. She would push on and search for her purpose, and the imprisoned blacksmith thought he may have had it. The chained misbegotten saw that she had the gift of spirit tuning. He said that he saw another one like her, long ago, their eyes sharing the same hue. He was indebted to that spirit tuner, whoever she was. In time, the crestfallen girl disappeared. She would never be seen again. In her place was someone much stronger, much more confident, someone to admire. From the ashes of grief, rose the Spirit Tuner, with the power to see how and why immortal essence existed as spirits under the Golden Order. She could understand their yearning, what they became drawn to. She found strength in herself to help others, for nothing in return. When the warrior became crestfallen, the Black Swordsman gifted her the ashes of a great Stormhawk king, and hoped that the spirits could ease her pain, to be like the Spirit Tuner. That is when the warrior said something very peculiar.
Not like Roderica. I don't feel the presence of spirits, let alone see them.
The Black Swordsman realized that this is why he was chosen. He could see spirits, he could speak with them, and he could hear them cry. As the Spirit Tuner said, the spirits looked fondly upon him. But how did Torrent know? Chapter 2. The Grave of Civilization. The shack on the hill stood empty now. It was for the better. The Spirit Tuner was safe at the Round Table Hold, tending to her own needs, and that of the needs of spirits. Further down the path was the shack of the War Master he had met. He had asked the Black Swordsman if his faith in the Golden Order held firm, although he claimed that he was more interested in the lost battle arts of this land. As the Black Swordsman approached, he thought he would find the place empty, and he did, but only for a moment. From the dark, he came, phasing in from a red and black mist, the bell-bearing hunter. His armor was mangled and twisted. The rusted iron briars marked him as a guilty man and indicated that he was sentenced to death. The motifs of lions decorated the leather on his shoulder. The mask on his face was bent and battered. A red line of blood subtly painted the chain coif beneath his neck. His blade danced through the air. This man was from Eokad, a lesser, long-vanished domain, known for dancing swords and dancing women. The Black Swordsman's spirit calling bell jingled with the last swing of his massive sword. The Black Swordsman felt like he crossed blades with this man before, and when he fell, he dropped a bell bearing, and tiny wisps danced around it. No doubt where he got his name, but why hunt bell bearings? There was something odd about the lands between. It felt artificial, as if the ground beneath the Black Swordsman's feet was put there with a purpose, like the hand of the greater will reached down and placed each tree and each stone. But for what he saw, it looked as if it could have been made by man. Nearly everywhere he went, black stone structures protruded from the ground or out of the faces of cliff sides, like the bones of the earth were piercing its skin. Giant pillars, large platforms, and flowing water. The lands between were old, but these constructions somehow seemed older. One thing he knew about Miquella, though he wasn't sure how he knew this, was that since birth he was afflicted with eternal youth. Thought to be the youngest of the demigods, as one of the twin Empyreans born of Marika and her second Elden Lord Radagon, the Black Swordsman knew the truth. From his time spent with the blind monk in the gold mask, the Black Swordsman knew that Radagon was Marika. Since Marika was the Eternal Queen, a Newman who was long-lived and seldom born, there was no way for the Black Swordsman, or anyone, to know how old she was or where she came from. Radagon was Marika, so similarly, he could not know how old the second Elden Lord was or where he came from. Likewise, how could anyone know the age of someone who was eternally youthful? How could you know when they were born when the origins of both of their parents were also unknowable? That was all to say that the Black Swordsman thought if he wanted to know more about Miquella, he would have to learn all he could about the history of the lands between. From messages left on the ground, writ by the wizened fingers of the Tarnished, he knew of a place that could have some leads. Traveling east from the War Master's shack, past the death-touched catacombs, was the Saint's Bridge, statues of the hooded Radagon decorating the path. But also...
Hello? Anyone?
Another time. The note had said to leap from the bridge, aim for a safe landing on the Spirit Spring, and to travel towards the Divine Tower. Facing west, there would be an entrance to a place known only as the High Road Cave. The The first thing the Black Swordsman was greeted with was a black stone pillar built into the cave wall, the bones of the earth, and then a pit in the ground with more pillars to lead his descent. Wolves had taken refuge in this cave, and deeper still past more pillars, bodies of Caden's sellswords were found. It looked like they may have found this place first. Then the wolves had found them. He came upon a large room where giant man-eater bats had made their home. Water was flowing into the room from multiple directions. This place was decorated by more stone pillars and a platform in the center. Braziers lit their surroundings. This was an important place. On the platform were the chewed remains of an explorer, either from Leyendell or the Academy, and on his person was a shamshir, a curved sword with a thin blade of ample length. The fighting style used for these sorts of weapons were not too dissimilar to a flowing river, expert cuts, one after the other. This place must have been significant at some point, perhaps for religious purposes or to honor a great hero of their time. There was a collapsed pillar underneath the water, and it looked like there was a ledge obscured by the falling water. Smooth black stone pillars and broken brick structures were strewn about the room. Light came in from above, casting its rays on the guardian golem, a black stone construct crafted by a civilization now gone to ruin. Was it always here, or did it fall down that hole? The automaton was powered by flame in its core, and with the Black Swordsman's strength, he was able to topple the monstrosity with one swing into its legs, exposing its heart and destroying the construct. After the battle, in the water, beneath the Black Swordsman's feet, floated a small cloth doll. It depicted a dancer garbed in blue, an ancient heirloom of some sort. The dancer in blue represented a fairy, who in legend bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, and that god was rot itself. Nomadic warriors, ever on the move, based their garb off of this legend, with the blue color of their fabric symbolizing brisk waters, as fluid and flowing as the swords in their hands. Just as still waters turn foul, stagnation leads to decay. Warriors must remain ever drifting, and some would wield curved blades that were patterned after flowing water, their strikes akin to a dance, offering a glimpse into the legend. Perhaps this place was constructed to honor this legend, a sanctum for flowing water, protected by a guardian golem amongst the ruin and the decay. In the center of Limgrave was a nearly drained lake. The burnt stone of a crumbling town could be found in the water. The denizens would desperately chant, "Agheel, Agheel," the name of the majestic beast who roosted in this area. Living deathless lives, these poor, mad people prayed to the dragon. They offered themselves up in sacrifice. They gazed up at the skies, praying that the dragon's flame would burn them to ash. A hunter of bloody fingers had warned the Black Swordsman to steer clear of the lake, unless he was a fool who wished to be burned to death. He wore an iron casa crafted to imitate the woven straw hats worn in the Land of Reeds. His armor was highly functional and heavily worn. It showed the signs of a man who traveled many roads and slayed many men. But he did not know the Black Swordsman. The Black Swordsman had fought much worse than dragons. At least, he must have. For why else would he have this massive, thick, and far too heavy heap of raw iron affixed to his back? The Black Swordsman thought he must have fought long against dragons. When the beast died, the Black Swordsman rode on and thought nothing of it. Killing was second nature of him. Killing was what he was best at. Just a killer. Only a killer. The lake bed was empty now. These people would not find their salvation at Dragonfire. Past the ruins, beneath a bridge of hung corpses returned to life, the Black Swordsman was assailed by another killer. He remembered it clearly. A bloody finger who rose from a pool of blood. The hunter in the iron casa told him who he was. He was a tarnished held in thrall by Cessblood, as the hunter called it. A noble servant of the Lord of Blood, he wore a robe of dyed black cloth featuring a gold embroidery, and intended to install a new dynasty for his reclusive lord. In hand, a jagged dagger designed to rip flesh and to drain blood. Blood for the Lord of Blood, as it were. The hunter said they were all mad zealots, tarnished who would hunt their fellow tarnished. The Black Swordsman saw them for what they were, though. They were killers. Not unlike the hunter, not unlike the Black Swordsman. All killers. After the bloody finger fell, the Black Swordsman stumbled into a cave and would meet a peculiar man. But a man he had felt he'd known forever.
Well. Thought you'd just help yourself to a man's personal belongings, huh?
A tower shield, a short spear, and a bald head. He looked so familiar, like a friendly face you knew you couldn't trust. But at each turn, he would trust him. The name that came to mind didn't feel right. Was it the hyena? No. It was Trusty. No, that wasn't right. Unbreakable? No. The Untethered. That's right. He was the Untethered. But the first name was out of reach. Many admired him for his chivalrous and forthright spirit. But there was always a trick to this man, and that trick was always followed by a laugh. The Rune Bear didn't see him immediately, and the Black Swordsman took shelter in the nearby well, the doors opening as if to invite him. And down he went. Down deeper than anyone should have ever gone. Down, and down, and down. A city passed by, the sleeping city of Nokron. Then beneath that was the ruins of the ancient dynasty. These ruins were found throughout the underground of the lands between, and some of their statues could be found protruding from the grounds of the sinking land of Liurnia. They had no name, for that was lost to time. All that was left of this once great civilization were stacked stones and the Claymen. The Claymen were warped remains of priests, bent and bowed with age. They searched for revelations of their lost oracles within their bubbles, all in service of the ancient dynasty. In hand, they held harpoons. Being located at the edge of two great rivers, these Claymen were also created to automate fishing for the people who lived here. Their harpoons had tips made from sharpened meteorite shards. How could a people so deep underground gather shards from the sky? Was the world above them always there? Was the sky that hung low always false? The Black Swordsmen saw their bubbles and thought back to the oracle envoys on the branches of Miquella's Halig tree, blowing bubbles from their pipes to herald the arrival of a new god or age. These Claymen seemed to be doing just the same. Massive stone pillars littered the underground. They looked to be of temples and roadways and great in size. Many people, or many Claymen, must have been needed to create buildings these vast, and many people must have lived here. The Black Swordsman wondered how could an entire people disappear and no one know? If this was the fate for a whole culture, a whole civilization, what chance was there for anyone to remember him when he was gone? There were also tablets with reliefs here. Some were wheels with intricate designs. Others had what looked like bulls or falling star beasts. Then one with wolves, or were they lions? Two of them were holding what looked like a brazier of flame. The most interesting of all of them were the obelisks. The first four reliefs of the obelisk were the same, but the last relief was different. The bottom showed what looked like people seated between pillars. Then above them it looked like as if there were people gathering around a rectangle smaller than them. Were they bringing something to it or taking something away? Some of the people looked smaller, maybe children. Above that was more people gathered around a table, some empty-handed, others carrying something. Was this a childbirth? An embalming of a corpse? Something else entirely? The next relief was the most clear to the Black Swordsman. People gathering around trees, some starting to sprout, others nearly full-grown. Were these ancient people cultivating Erd trees? The tops of these obelisks were where they diverged. Some had people gather around what looked like a fire, or maybe a tree. A burning tree? The other obelisks had something even less clear. Were these ships sailing out to sea? Towers in the wind? Towers in the sea? The Black Swordsman did not know, and no one would tell him. Up ahead was a dam, built by the Nox, Statues of their sorceresses decorated the ledges. Long ago, the Nox invoked the ire of the Greater Will and were banished deep underground. Now, they lived under a false night sky in eternal anticipation of their lord, of the coming age of stars, of their lord of night. In the clearing, large, white, petrified and felled trees dotted the low-lying waterbed. Wildlife roamed freely here. Deer, wild boars, giant crabs, and land octopi. Life flourished deep underground amongst the bones of a dead civilization, the false night sky of the Nox hanging overhead. Ice lightning gently drifted above the water, and wooden scaffolding built by explorers from the world above were mounted on the ancient stone. There was also something lurking here, unable to be seen at a distance. The residual life of ancestral followers dwelled down in these lands. Between the Safra riverbank and the worshippers' woods, they would appear, wearing their fur raiments and great horned headbands, the aura of a ghostly silver. They were brawny fellows, a people who eschewed letters and metalworking, but what they lacked in technological advancement, they made up for in spiritual arts. The ancestral followers kept their distance from the Erd Tree and believed in a more holistic view of the world, one where spirit and body were interconnected, as was life and death. As such, their weapons were made from the parts of dead animals, such as beast molar teeth or hammers made from an ancient great horn. It wasn't just the bodies that were used, but the spirits as well. They would imbue the spirits of ancestry into their weaponry to enhance their power. It was thought that spirits of the animals dwelled in each of their arrows. Central to their culture was the budding of horns. They were a rarely seen specimen that was found on herbivorous beasts, and usually sprout on animals that typically bore no horns, a vestige of the primordial crucible. The Black Swordsman noticed that his steed only ate raisins, and had 2 horns sprouting from his head. The ancestral followers awaited the sprouting of new budding horns. They were certain that they would sprout not just from their flesh, but from their very souls. They believed that the horns of a long-lived beast continued to bud like antlers, over and over again, until the beast became an ancestral spirit. Above the Safra riverbank was a highway constructed during the ancient dynasty, a path that led to what was known as the ancestral woods and the hollow horn grounds. As the Black Swordsman traveled down the path, he came across a ghost, desperately yelling across the cavern. Off in the distance was a building of many pillars, sitting atop what looked like the stump of a felled tree.
Lord of Blood, Your Eminence, I beg you, grant me a seat at the table of the dynasty. Long live Magwin dynasty. Long live the Magwin dynasty.
The Black Swordsman thought that must have been where the bloody fingers came from, their Lord of Blood far off in an unreachable place, the bridge from here to there broken. The ancestral followers were here too, yet they were in corporeal form and not too far from their spiritual brethren. Through the woods, the Black Swordsman could hear shamans singing a sweet song that sounded like a lullaby. They wore headbands decorated with a pair of horns that shone with buds, and in their hands held skulls of very young ancestral spirits. Spirit vapors could be seen emanating from the skulls as the shamans stomped their feet and sang their songs. The men and animals of these woods were both entranced by this ancestral worship. Unlike the spirits down below, some of the men here carried winged great horns, which were considered envoy wings, made to reap the lives of beings which experienced no sprouting. They reminded him of the deathbird wings. Perhaps death which brought no new life were to be burned in ghost flame, the Black Swordsman thought. Past the woods was a massive body of water and petrified trees, their tops felled or collapsed, stretched as far as the eye could see. Playing nearby was something peculiar, a red wolf, one of Radigan's. What was this doing here? It attacked on sight, though he wished that it hadn't. The red wolf cast carrion magic as it leapt through the air. It must have come here after Radigan and Renala wed. But why down here? Was it by chance, or with a purpose? There was to be no fighting here. there was to be no war, and death was not shunned or seen as a curse, but seen as the chance for life to be born anew. The Black Swordsman liked these woods, although you couldn't see the light of the sun or of the Erdtree. It was calm. It was peaceful. He had heard tell of another Tarnished who cultivated close ties with the ancestral followers and decided to live amongst them. That would not be the life for the Black Swordsman. As he lit the braziers, he had angered the people of the woods, and he had to cut them down. He was a killer. All he knew had to do was to kill. Violence and death followed him wherever he went. Nowhere would be safe from him. There would be no peace for a sword. There would be no rest for a swordsman. After all the braziers were lit, power began to gather in the Hollowhorn remains. When the Black Swordsman touched the budding remains of the dead beast, he was transported to somewhere else, somewhere deep underground, or perhaps in another place altogether. The dead beast he had touched was alive, the buds on its antlers glowing. The beast sprayed spirit vapors and fought to defend the sacred domain. The spirits of other beasts roam among the bones, life sprouting under skull and rib. This spirit was a regal ancestor, a king in its own right. Ancestral spirits existed as a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Erdtree. Without root burial, life would sprout from death, as it does from birth. Such is the way of living. But from death, one obtains power, and the Black Swordsman cut down the Spirit King, and power did he obtain. Before the Black Swordsman entered these hollow grounds, before he slayed the spirit of a regal ancestor, he traveled through Nokron. When he fought as a blade for Lunar Princess Rani, he was tasked with pilfering its hidden treasure, and with the death of her brother Starscourge Radahn, a star fell from the sky and bit the earth, revealing the path to the city of mimics. The Black Swordsman crossed paths with a pitiful folk, a band of slaves known as the Fallen Hawks. Most likely from the Stormvale region, these ex-soldiers were sent to explore the Eternal Cities. Being that these men were spurned by the Erdtree, they began to burn their bones of their fellows, acquiring the cold ghost flame, but sealing their fate as dwellers of the underground for all of eternity. Life near the Eternal Cities was defined by the color silver. The flora and fauna were all silver. Silver mushrooms dripped with a viscous fluid that behaved much like oil. Silver herba was soaked in an arcane dew and gave off the faint glow of starlight. Even the fireflies gave off a silver light. And that was because of the silver tears. They were a formless life form and were able to take any shape. Some said that silver tears made a mockery of life, reborn again and again into imitation. Tears were still tears regardless of color, though. These silver tears traveled alongside clerics of the Nox, the cold-blooded race who wielded flowing weapons. Perhaps the Nox were just mimics made man. When he confronted one, its sword flowed like a liquid metal, as if the blade was made of water, as if she was dancing with the blade. As the Black Swordsman pushed on, before he would reach the ancient highway, he came upon a large room. A broken statue of the ancient dynasty was at the end. But before that was a mimic tier, the result of an attempt by the Eternal City to forge a lord. Formless and lifeless, it pooled on the ground, without movement. Then it took shape. It took the shape of the Black Swordsman. He wore pitch-black armor, thinly painted with dried blood. In his hands was a coarse lump of iron of an ultra greatsword. With its incredible weight, it would mow down foes, though handling it likely required the wielder to have surpassed the realm of merely human. It is precisely for this reason the weapon is used to slaughter even inhuman foes. Used to slaughter even the Black Swordsman. The mimic looked at the Black Swordsman, and the Black Swordsman looked at the mimic, and the mimic looked at the Black Swordsman, and the Black Swordsman looked at the Black Swordsman, and the mimic was a mimic of the Black Swordsman, was a mimic of a mimic of the Black Swordsman, was a mimic, and he swung his sword, and his bones cracked underneath his armor, and his blood ran down his arm and dripped from the hilt of his blade, and he looked just like the Black Swordsman. As the Black Swordsman died, the Black Swordsman. Down below, in the night's sacred ground, before the treasure that Rani desired, were silver tear mimics, reborn again and again into imitation. Some said that silver tears made mockery of the Black Swordsman. One took the form of a man with a short spear and tower shield. He looked like a hyena, trusty, unbreakable, and untethered. Another took the form of a man with a Zweihander. He looked like a war master, interested in lost battle arts. Another took the form of the Black Swordsman.
It is in thy possession, is it not? The hidden treasure of Nokron. My thanks. Finally all the pieces are in place. Soon must I begin my journey. Upon the dark path only I may tread. I must thank Torrent too for his part. You may leave now. It was but brief. But thou gavest me fine service. O Shadow, thou art the last. Tell the two fingers that Rani the witch cometh to rend thy flesh with a fateful wound, ne'er to heal. Beautifully fought. My thanks. 'Twas more of a challenge than I envisioned. Now I can finally stand before them. This is farewell, my dear. Tell Blythe and Iji I love them.
Downstream from the Ainzel River was a great lake of standing water, the Lake of Rot. A dam built by the Nox was the only thing stopping this rot from crawling up the rest of the river. It was said that the divine essence of an outer god was sealed away in this land. Was this how they did it? By constructing dams? The Black Swordsman wondered. Good thing he packed his preserving boluses, made from the dew-kissed herba of the eternal cities, crystal cave moss of glintstone-impacted lands, and buds that were said to have been cultivated with youthful, sacramental blood. From the shoreline, the Black Swordsman saw dead trees, their branches withered, and their trunks emaciated. But he also saw new life. It looked alien. It looked disturbing. But it was life. Through the mire, he came across a lone ancestral follower. And on his person was an immunizing horn charm to increase his resistance to poison and rot. The Black Swordsman thought that this was a rite of passage for their culture. Life growing from death was a tantamount importance to their people, and those who dwell within poison know rot all too well. The death that begets life, that comes to all equally. That was to say, it is the cycle of rebirth put into practice. Up above, embedded into the cave's ceiling, was a massive deposit of glintstone. Based on his location underground, the Black Swordsman deduced he was directly beneath Liurnia of the Lakes, home of the Academy of Raya Lucaria. The Academy's location must have been chosen because of the mass amount of glintstone, the most to be found in all of the lands between. But that glintstone came at a price. The land above was sinking directly into a massive lake of rot. The Academy would not last forever. Nothing ever does. Amongst the rot were the bug-eyed basilisks that spewed the deathblade of the Prince of Death. They must have come here either by burrowing from the deep-root depths or just by following the Ainzel River to this point. What disturbed the Black Swordsman the most, though, was that this lake was littered with more of the ancient stone structures of the Lost Dynasty. Was this what had become of that civilization? It fell to rot? A vast culture that spanned the entirety of the underground, built on the life-giving and flowing rivers, had all come to end in stagnation? That stagnation leading to rot? In one of the ruins, the Black Swordsman found a colonizing mushroom. These mushrooms will grow all over the body, and to those enraptured by the scarlet rot, they were seen as a holy vestment that roots one to the earth. Long ago, great lords served the scarlet rot. Perhaps such fungal bodies served as their crowns. When he had traveled here the first time, the obelisks showing the history of these people would cause structures to emerge from the ground. Now, they stood as a grand testament as what you could lose when you subject yourself to rot. At the end of the lake were two massive statues of the same man. At his feet was a map of the known world, for a time, the Imogo Mundi. The Black Swordsman was no tarnished archaeologist, but he knew things. In his arms, he held another tablet. Roots spiraled down from his beard, down his legs, and around the map of the world. With the discovery of great tree roots, what they thought of the world must have seemed small, insignificant. and irrelevant. A new world would be born out of the old, the cycle of rebirth put into practice. On the wall ahead of him, the reliefs he had seen on the obelisk writ large. He could make out the images more clearly now, and what he saw previously began to make sense. To the Black Swordsman, they told a story. Wise men were gathering at the base, seated in a hall constructed with great pillars. Many people gathered at an altar in prayer, or to present an offering, or maybe to make a sacrifice. Then, a great child was born. Perhaps it was an Empyrean. Maybe it was Queen Marika herself. Then, trees began to be cultivated. Perhaps those were the petrified trees, or maybe they were Erd trees. But one tree was greater than the rest. This tree was spiraled. Maybe this tree housed the Elden Ring. Maybe it housed the Crucible. Whatever it was greater than all others. Then, finally, he saw it clearly. The Divine Towers. It is said that long ago, the Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the lands between, which would later become the Elden Ring. Perhaps they built the Divine Towers to be closer to the heavens, to be able to touch the stars that brought the grace of gold. These must have been the people who built the world above, who placed the trees and the rocks, who made the water flow. While the Black Swordsman studied the history of these people, he didn't notice that they were still there, that they were with him now. Many hands, with many fingers, skittered and scratched the old rotten stone as they scurried along, the kindred of rot, crawling pest with hard chitinous bodies that made a dry rustling sound when they moved. They were servants of the goddess of rot, servants that had been forsaken. In their many hands with many fingers were glaives made from a hard, sharpened shell. It was proof that the pest had a keen intellect, but one that would never be understood. At the end of this massive temple, the kindred of rot were held in exaltation. Somehow, he heard their prayer, as if it was scratching and scraping at his skull from inside his mind. Rot for the Scarlet Goddess. Oh, scarlet blossoms, flourish in distant lands and return to us, the unwanted children. Forgotten and abandoned, the ruins of the ancient dynasty sat on the ground, servants of rot waiting for their goddess. At the top of the stairs was a dark room, covered in rotten mushrooms. The air was thicker here than it was at the Lake of Rot. The statue of the bearded man towered over, fauna of decay covering his regal figure. Inside the chest was a dagger fashioned from a great scorpion's tail, glistening with scarlet rot. This was a relic of the sealed rot god itself. On its hilt was the head of a white wolf. Wolves are said to be shadows of Empyreans. The Black Swordsman knew what this meant. The twin Empyreans were here, all the way at the end of the ancient dynasty, all the way at the start of the lands between. Chapter 3. The Abandoned Children. This marks Malenia's southward march. The blade of Miquella and her clean wrought knights. Grant her wings never be clipped. Godric the Golden, humiliated, having tasted defeat by the blade of Miquella, now on his knees, begging for mercy.
Honestly, Godric's nothing more than a jumped-up country bumpkin. Lord? Oh, don't make me laugh. First, he hid himself amongst the womenfolk to flee the capital, then hid from Radahn in that castle. Then he insulted Malenia, lost to her in battle, only to lick her boots rather than die like a man. Has he no shame, the big girl's blouse? And to think, he's the blood of Godfrey, last of the golden lineage. You almost wouldn't know if you look at him.
The Battle of Ionia. Radahn and Malenia locked in stalemate. Then, scarlet rot blooms. Caelid, known as the locale of the last battle between General Radahn and Malenia, Blade of Miquella, is now a vast land consummately marred by scarlet rot.
It's rotting. Everything rotting scarlet. The very earth that Caelid rests upon. And Celia, town of sorcery.
The end is nigh for us all. General Radahn, the famed Red Lion and Scourge of the Stars, was a ferocious warrior. Son to Rennala and Radagon, he was a demigod who shared the blood of the eternal Queen Marika and the Queen of the Full Moon. The Redmanes were the soldiers of General Radahn, and were all reputed as masterful warriors, and it was popularly said that they knew no weakness. The Red Lion General wielded gravitational powers which he learned in Celia during his younger years. Some say so he would never have to abandon his beloved yet scrawny seed. Then, the mightiest hero of the demigods confronted the falling stars, alone. Thus did he crush them, his conquest sealing the very fate of the stars in stasis. The scarlet rot in the air painted the sky an ominous red. The once beautiful wildlands had transformed to decaying waste. Fungal growths ate at the ground and grew from their rot. This decay led to the reemergence of giant entombed skeletons, bodies far larger than even the lands between itself. All the while, survivors of Radahn's army were still attempting to stave off scarlet rot with fire. When they were driven to defeat by Malenia's scarlet rot, the Redmane Knights burned the crest on their left breast of their armor to indicate their resolve. "Alas, dear home, I shan't see you again, for our duty is to remain here, a bulwark against the blight," one knight wrote in a letter sent to his family. But not all noble causes can keep clean hands. In underground caves, those afflicted with the rot were imprisoned and lit aflame, their bodies eternally decaying, eternally burning, eternally suffering. All in honor to the mightiest of the demigods, his great rune burning from within.
Before we begin, allow me to paint you the full picture. General Radahn is cursed ever to wander. Eaten from the inside by Malenia's scarlet rot, his wits are long gone. Now he gathers the corpses of former friends and foes alike, gorging on them like a dog. Howling at the sky.
The stars still held in stasis until the Black Swordsman came.
Champions! Welcome! The stars have aligned. The festival is nigh. General Radahn, mightiest demigod of the Shattering, awaits you. Champions, prepare for battle. Defeat the General, claim glory, and grab that great rune. A celebration of war. The Radahn Festival!
An eccentric and unusually colorful armor and a bearded mask was a guest commander for General Radahn, and he was bound by an honorable oath. After spending time with the Carian royals, him and Radahn swore an oath of honorable death to one another. The eccentric held the Radahn Festival, a celebration of war, to give the famed Red Lion an honorable death by the sword, and with the help of champions of the moon, champions of clay and wax, and champions of blood and death, the Black Swordsman was able to take down the strongest demigod of them all, claim his great rune, and set the stars back into motion. Thanks to the eccentric, and many others, he was able to do what Malenia could not.
defeat Radahn, and release the stars.
I can just squeeze this bunch down inside me, I'll be a mighty warrior again in no time. And you know, the bodies found here are exceedingly fine. Who could expect any less from the very warriors who fought in the Shattering, the greatest of all wars?
Malenia the Severed was the undefeated swordswoman and the blade of Miquella, and goddess of scarlet rot. She was the daughter of Marika and Ranagan, and as the child of a single god, she was born an Empyrean carrying the scarlet rot, a new god to forge a new order. She wore armor of unalloyed gold and a helm with golden wings. With her golden prothesis, she would become a one-armed Valkyrie, and built into the prosthetic arm was a blade that resisted the rot. Her war protheses symbolized her victories, and some claimed to have seen wings when the weapon was raised aloft. Wings of fierce determination that have never known defeat. Let me see it, if only one last time, your splendid blade dancing amongst the scarlet rot. Her insignia was that of a winged sword which symbolized her and her undefeated prowess. Though she never knew relief from the accursed rot she was born into, her blade was forever beautiful, forever relentless. The Clean Rot Knights vowed to fight alongside Malenia, despite the inevitable, if gradual, putrefaction of their flesh. Their acceptance of fate made their battles the fiercest of all, and they were celebrated for their undefeated campaign in the Shattering. Their spears were winged golden blades. A diminutive shield fixed to the weapon was blessed with an incantation that warded off rot. The commanders of Malenia's army held scythes that were shaped in the half-halo of Miquella and could summon his rings of light to cut through their path. But there would be no victor here, and the Scarlet Aeonia would bloom into a gigantic flower of scarlet rot. Rot bubbled up from the swamp of Aeonia as it ate away at life like a vicious plague. The butterflies with withered scarlet wings danced through the air. According to myth, these butterflies were once the wings of the goddess of rot herself, before the rot was sealed away. Sublime, I tell you, the very first flower of Aeonia bloom on this very spot. Malenia, may you blossom into a goddess. Those colonized by mushrooms were here amongst the rot, the forsaken pests roaming the wasteland. Stone coffins cultivated rot. Those unreturned to the roots would feed the decay and birth new pests. Thus does the new life grow from death, and from death one obtains power. The sage was here too.
Oh, a pleasure to see you. A pleasure indeed. I am Gari, a great sage. In my day, anyway. I'd hoped to ask a favor when one of your ilk came along. A strapping young tarnished, able to cross the scarlet swamp of Aeonia. I need your help to heal a certain young girl. Her name is Millicent. The rotting sickness that afflicts Millicent has no cure. When the Earth Tree flourished, even the demigods could not stave off its effects, despite their nigh godhood. But Millicent's suffering can be ameliorated. For this, you are to find a certain needle. The needle, made from unalloyed gold.
In the center of the Aeonian flower was Commander O'Neill, a comrade to Commander Niall. He brandished a flag of his people. Even through the devastation of the rot-eaten field of battle, this sole veteran remembered this battle with pride. Spirits of exiled soldiers came to his aid when their commander was under attack. The Black Swordsman's spirit-calling bell jingled lightly as he hefted the weight of his blade. found on the ground, snapped in half. An intrinsically crafted needle of unalloyed gold. A ritual implement crafted to ward away the meddling outer gods.
The needle is repaired. Now it will forestall the rotting sickness, I'm sure. Millicent rests at the church atop the cliff beyond Celia, the town yonder. Tended to by the witless pests who worship her, or rather her rotting sickness, as a god. A wretched fate, indeed. The poor girl, she never wished for any of this.
At the top of the hill, guarded by pests, and among blooming sacramental buds, was Millicent. The statue of America loomed overhead, always present, always watching. Bent, bowed, and broken, her flesh writhed with scarlet rot. The Black Swordsman presented the needle of unalloyed gold.
Ask that I stab myself with the needle to quell the scarlet rot. But how? Never mind. I've decided I would rather trust you than simply continue to spoil from within. Would you mind averting your eyes for a moment?
And just like a bewitching branch, she pierced herself with the needle, and the Black Swordsman gained a new ally.
Well, that was easier than expected. But why do I feel so... I hoped to see you again. My apologies for when last we met. I fainted before I could even thank you. Everything is as you said. Since inserting the needle, the scarlet rot has ceased to writhe. Even the nightmares have abated. And now, though I can scarcely believe it myself, I can move as I please. Not that I could ever truly repay you, but I would like you to have this, by way of thanks. A token though it is.
She gifted the Black Swordsman with a talisman engraved with the scene from her heroic tale. Though born into accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. You could never know the age of someone who eternally decayed, the Black Swordsman thought.
I'm considering leaving. On a journey. With the needle buried in my flesh, I've started to recall, but dimly, my destiny.
Thank you kindly for giving the needle to Millicent. Now she too can begin her journey and stare her fate straight in the eye. You've been a saint through and through. Do you find it peculiar that I would show such concern for the girl? Well, I'm the one that found her. A mere babe in the swamp of Aeonia. She is one of my dear daughters. But the rotting sickness erodes one's memory. I doubt that she remembers the first thing about me. Oh, I must be getting old. I didn't always worry so much.
Hello again. Something about this place felt familiar to me, so I decided to pay a visit. Hoping to find someone here, but I've only found emptiness. Perhaps, before my departure, I needed someone to say farewell to. Never mind that. I must focus on my journey, for which I have you to thank. I must stay strong.
Oh, you noticed, did you? Indeed, Millicent did visit this hovel of a home. It seems the memories eaten away by the rotting sickness yet remain, but faintly. However, she has no need of me anymore. No, she must embark on her journey and stare her fate in the eye. I mustn't impede. As I've aged, I've found the best way to aid the young is to be forgotten. Please make certain that little Millicent goes unharmed. Like her mother, she has the stuff to be a great warrior, but commands only one arm and is yet preciously young.
And so, the Black Swordsman followed young Millicent to protect her from harm. He too was going to stare fate straight in the eye. He too had eroded memory. He too had one arm.
My thanks to you and your razor-sharp wits. Oh, as a token of my thanks, I'd like you to have this.
Hey, have you met that girl, Raya? She's a strange one, but I believe she was in need of help. Not that it's any of my business, but if she rings your bell, why not lend her an ear?
Could I ask you lend a hand, perhaps? That thug made off with a precious necklace. I need someone to retrieve it. Only, he too is tarnished. If you've any qualms confronting your own, I shall find another.
What the hell is wrong with you? You trying to start something? Piss off, before I crack you in half. Ah, that necklace what you're after, is it? Well, show me what it's worth to you, and I'll consider parting ways with it. I'm not in love with it or nothing.
Did I forget to announce myself? I am Raya, in the service of Lady Tanith of the Volcano Manor. I seek stalwart tarnished, who might join our house. You are very brave yourself. Not only a steady hand, but a steady heart. Merciless, even to your own kind. Such strength is precisely what my mistress seeks.
Built into the cliffside was the ruin-strewn precipice. At the base was a mining village. Tunnels had been dug in search of gold-tinged smithing stones. A massive waterway was constructed into the face of the cliff, relics of a bygone past, and civilization made of black stone, a culture of golems, fairies, and blind swordsmen. Up above, amongst the giant bats and land occupy, were chanting winged dames singing their song of lament. They had the faces of old crones, were well versed with the ancient death hexes, and they wore ornate jewelry of gold. These were ancient beings who had lived in the lands between longer than anyone remembered. Only the rocks and stone remembered. They sang a beautiful and sad song, and somehow the Black Swordsman knew the words. Alas, that land, once blessed, now has diminished. We, destined to be mothers, now become tarnished. We have lamented and we have shed tears, but no one consoles us. Golden One, at whom were you angry? The Black Swordsman felt the same way they did. In a room not too dissimilar to the place where he fought the Guardian Golem, the magma worm Makar attacked. It is said that these land-bound dragons were once human heroes who partook in dragon communion, a grave transgression for which they were cursed to crawl the earth upon their bellies, shadows of their former selves. Luckily for the Black Swordsman, he had made enough friends along the way to help him. The one-armed woman's Shamshir blade danced like a butterfly gliding across water. The blackguard's use of his might to pummel the beast with his iron fists. The Black Swordsman used the entire weight and momentum of his body to be one with his massive great sword. The floorboards creaked as the old mine shaft elevator lifted him from the ruin-strewn precipice. Fresh blood from the felled magma worm Makar still dripped from his blade. The Black Swordsman had made it to the land of the Erdtree, to the Altus Plateau. Scars from the shattering still remained apparent to this day.
That seems like a good as place as any to take a break. Do you like the story so far? Have you subscribed to any of the lore I've told you yet? At this point, the Black Swordsman explores the Sage's Cave and discovers the mysteries that it holds. If you're interested in what happens in the Sage's Cave, I would recommend watching that astral projection here. But we will pick up following where the Black Swordsman left off as he chases after the one-armed woman.
Ah, we meet again. In truth, it's been smooth sailing for me.
The scarlet rot has stilled since last we met. As such, I've been able to continue my journey. Though rather vexingly, I realized that if I still had my sword arm, I could have aided you in battle. Now I'm tracing the path Melania took, after unleashing the power of the Scarlet Rot during her battle with General Radahn in the Caelid Wilds. I should like to meet her. This vanished woman. I think she's in the north, in the lands that lie beyond the Erd Tree.
To the east, ruins of gold. To the west, the serpent's sacrilege. Wherever the path leads, so shall you follow. Wherever the path leads, only more sorrow. 'Tis a curse. A curse. The curse of Queen Marika.
Praetor Rykard is the lord of the Volcano Manor on Mount Gelmir. He is a ruthless justiciar who commands a company of inquisitors, reviled for his serpentine demeanor. The volcano, Mount Gelmir, lies in the west of the Altus Plateau, the realm of the Erd Tree. It was the stage of the most appalling battle in the entirety of the Shattering. Rykard has committed the grave sin of blasphemy, marking himself as an enemy never to be forgiven.
Sheer cliffs, ominous skies, death, madness, and despair. Those were the qualities of Mount Gelmir. Qualities that only became more pronounced after the Shattering. With invitation in hand, the Black Swordsman would prove himself by this journey, to fight amongst a family of champions. But first, he needed to ride past the worst invention of man. It was not an invention of metal or stone. It was an invention of arrogance and greed. It was an invention only man could create from nothing. It was war, violence, destruction, the loss of untold lives, the creation of so much sorrow. Mothers would lose sons, wives would lose husbands, and children would lose fathers. All so the crows could feast. Amongst the rotting bodies where sacramental buds blossomed, the Black Swordsman was at home. With each enemy that fell, with each life snuffed out, runes from the shattered Elden Ring would gather within him, and he would be empowered. He could bring death to others. He could take away that one irreplaceable thing, a life that could never return, and he would be better for it. Stronger, faster, and smarter. He could share the pain he felt. He could give the loss he had. He could give the emptiness he felt.
Lord Rykard, if this putrid field of death is what your blasphemy would bring, then I can no longer abide. No one can.
The Black Swordsman was not deterred. The lament of ghosts, the desecration of bodies, and the madness-afflicted soldiers did not frighten him. Nothing would. A hollow monument for sin stood before him now, but when he first arrived, it welcomed him with open arms. The Volcano Manor was dark, ornate, and warm. The heat inside the main hall was like a gentle hug that held his entire body. Underneath his heavy blood-stained black iron, the Black Swordsman felt relaxed and calm. He would not, nor could not, raise his sword in this place. A portrait of Rykard showed a regal man in the blue robes worn by magisterial officials. These were men of the capital who would carry out grim tasks, surveillance, executions, gruesome rituals, all of the darkest duties that drove the wheels of mankind. As a proud son of Radagon, Rykard would attempt to emulate his father by rejecting such villainy, but in its stead, he embraced his own. He would embrace the serpent. He would embrace her. Beneath a portrait of the Lord of Blasphemy, tendrils with fingers reaching up at him, sat his consort. She wore a mask that was in the image of a foreign queen. She was dignified, she was elusive, and she was charming. When Rykard first laid eyes on her, she was working as a dancer in a foreign land. Soon, he made her his consort. When Rykard became the Serpent of Blasphemy, she was the only human to remain by his side, for in that moment, she was truly charmed by him, by what he had become.
Brave Tarnished. Welcome to the Volcano Manor. I am Tanith, the proprietress of this house. Raya spoke well of you. A warrior of promise, I believe she said. Perhaps you are
a warrior of promise, she called the Black Swordsman, and asked if he would reject the burden of grace and rise against the Erd Tree. This was no place for the meek, nor the luxury of keeping clean hands. His black iron armor was thinly painted with dried blood. On the table was a letter, and a furled finger covered in snake scales, an heirloom of the Lord of the Volcano Manor, bequeathed to the Tarnished who had become family. Seated by the fire in silver armor, his Zweihander traded in for a scepter in the shape of a serpent devouring the world, the War Master sat, his face now obscured with a silver helm engraved with tiny beasts, their eyes and ears covered, representing an oath. See nothing, hear nothing, doubt nothing, and carry on, along the path set in stone.
What in heaven's name are you doing here? The Volcano Manor is a pit of recusants who spit at grace and hunt our own kind. I hope you understand the weight of my words, but know that the path you walk is blasphemy and leads only to a miserable death. Before you consider hunting any of your own kind, think on that. To take power and make it his own, the recusant must hunt his own kind. To raise the flag of revolt against this sanctified pillaging, we recusants must become the most wretched of predators. All you can do is laugh.
The one of the few wise and tarnished who survived to this day, one covered in rock-hard scales, who helped the Black Swordsman reach the Church of Dragon Commune, slain by a massive heap of iron.
You've completed your task. I am pleased. Now you are a recusant true, and a full-fledged member of the Volcano Manor.
Black leather armor for blending into darkness. He looked much like the man from the Church of Anticipation.
I see you've performed another task for us. The Erd Tree blessed the Tarnished with grace, but it was all too meager in the face of the enormity of their task. The Tarnished were forced to scavenge, squabbling for crumbs, like the Shard Bearers vying for power in the wake of the Shattering. Our Lord, indignant, has refused to scurry about, fighting over what miserly scraps they allow us. If the Erd Tree, and indeed the very gods, would debase us so, then we are willing to raise the banner of resistance, even if it means heresy.
Are you surprised that I belong to the Volcano Manor? I always hated the gibberish about lost grace and the laughable two fingers. I thought I could lend a hand in unmasking the charade. Not to mention, Tanith has always made me curious. I guess her master must really be something, because she's pretty damn smug about it. Even after announcing her blasphemous ambitions, she still stands proud. I've never seen a woman quite like her. Ah, hello. What impeccable timing. This is for you. Complete the request, you can improve your standing. Relax. We're old friends. Time's come to pass the torch, right? Go on, break a leg then.
Where the Black Swordsman slayed a great beast thanks to two friends, the famed Knight of Assistance would crumble under the sheer force of his bloodlust.
Look at you. A recusant through and through. I knew you had it in you. Take this. A special invitation. to hunt some of the first Tarnished who sat at the Round Table hold. If you should accept, I'll next see you on the field of battle.
The Raging Wolf, a Tarnish who aspired to be an Empyrean's wolf, their shadow. The Errant Sorcerer, a Tarnish who contacted the primeval current and friend to the Raging Wolf, would both be cut down by War Master and Black Swordsman.
I had hoped you'd soon return. I have the reward from Lady Tanith. Take it. It's yours, by right. Let us tread the path of the recusant together, till we reach the miserable death that awaits us.
Red letter, Night of Blood. Cold winds. Twin-tailed silver helm. Flowery ornaments. Dead. Shack. Burned body. Maiden's clothes. Outside, the moon hung low. He had returned from his hunt. Echoing through the halls of the manor, a voice only he heard. The spirit's armor bore an emblem that none wore any longer, standing as it did for a lord that fell from loft ambition into gluttonous depravity.
You're tarnished, here to put the demigods to the sword. Then please, kill the great serpent, the one that devoured Praetor Rykard. I left the serpent slaying spear in the Lord's chamber. Worthy tarnished. Brandish the spear and run him through. The great serpent. That unspeakable monstrosity.
He would hunt the serpent. The serpent would grant him power.
I see that you stayed the path of champions. This is your usual reward. Please, take it. Perhaps you are ready. Might you see our Lord? Our Lord will no doubt welcome you. Another kindred spirit, treading the path of champions.
Like the demigod Rykard, he would take by force. The gods themselves were no different after all. The cavern was vast. Great pillars built of charred corpses towered throughout the volcano's interior. Serpent hunter in hand, he confronted the immortal Great Serpent. Like in the distant past, a blade of light manifested itself from the sword spear. This was the ancient serpent deity of a long-forgotten religion practiced on Melkgalmir. After Rykard discovered the ancient hexes of the volcano and brought them back into practical use, he soon discovered the elder serpent that dwelled within. The snake was the traitor to the Erdtree, and like it had happened long ago, the serpent would devour a demigod. Rykard fed himself to the blasphemous serpent, great rune and all, so that he might conquer, so he might grow, so he could live eternally, so he could devour the world.
Very well. King has remedy. Together we will devour the very gods.
sheathed inside the great serpent was a sacred sword, the remains of countless heroes writhing upon the surface of the blade. Terrible power was unleashed, and spirits manifested from the rancor of heroes who had met at a violent end. They followed the path of champions, the path of the recusant, and the Lord granted them audience within the maw of the great serpent so they could become family together.
It's true then. You've defeated our Lord. No. I must thank you. Our Lord was yet weak. You have taught us that defeat is not the end. Our Lord is immortal, and will one day rise again. Stronger. Until then, I must stay the path and do my part.
You killed Rykard. I harbor you no ill will. The strong take. Such is our code.
Now you've gone and killed Rykard. You scheming little bastard. Cripes, you make this nonsense seem, well, less nonsensical. Perhaps a Tarnished will be Elden Lord after all. But for now, this manor is finished. The demigod beast is slain, and Tanith has lost her head. A fine mess. But how else could it end? When Daddy Ambition's head over heels courting Lady Blasphemy. Well, here I am, untethered, once again. Goodbye, my friend.
This goodbye would not be for long. Two would meet again at the castle in the shade. Similarly to other castles of the previous era, the shaded castle was built in the style of the Seat of the Sun. With the Erd tree's light polluting the sky, the warmth of the sun could not reach this place. What was once a large and towering fortification sank into rot and squalor, the denizens subjected to a gross putrefaction. With the shattering, the Castellans of this place, House Mirai, had let it fall into disrepair. On the ramparts, the Black Swordsman encountered depraved perfumers, the embroidery on their aprons depicting an ancient enemy of the Erd Tree. In their slow descent into self-destruction, these heresy-inclined perfumers imbibed their own spices to alter their bodies and mind. For a time, perfumers were healers, a blessed apothecary in the eyes of many and much respected. Some would dedicate their efforts to treating misbegotten, omen, and all those seen as impure. When their effort failed, they would be their companions as they died, watching over them to ensure that they could pass peacefully, free of pain. A tale akin to the origins of the deathbed companions from a foreign land. When Deathroot began to spread, and the Erd Tree ceased producing its bountiful dew and sap, the art of perfuming became a jealously guarded act within the capital. By combining the pollen from the man-eating Miranda flower with various ingredients, they could mimic the power of the Erd Tree once granted. With the shattering, however, they entered military service and began employing tactics beyond ordinary physicians. Their aromatics had an extremely potent morale-raising effect that made those accustomed to it fearless in the face of death. It was this influence that made the perfumers exceptional commanders. They could make men march to their own demise. Eventually, they would trade their aromatics for poisons and explosives, arts that would be considered forbidden for its destructive power against those of bark and wood, and turning man's instincts into that of rabid beasts. This path would lead them to even hunting the living jars filled with the remains of nobles and warriors, jars destined to feed the budding minor Erd trees. They would become as the serpents depicted on their aprons. Among the muck and mire of the sinking castle, wraith callers jingled their bells. These multi-limbed, blue-skinned hunchbacks resembled that of the doll Lunar Princess Rani inhabited. The sound of their bells would summon vengeful spirits of those who died when cursed, and like the royal revenants that they worshipped, healing power of the Erd Tree would cause them harm. House Mirai was harboring enemies of the tree that put them in the shade. Amongst enemies of the Erd Tree was one of Millennia's Cleanrot Knights, guarding a room of statues. There were 4 variations of statues, all women. He recognized them all. A woman holding a spear and covered in vines, the warrior of the Erd Tree. A hooded woman holding a scroll to her chest, the learned of Liurnia. A hooded woman with her hand outstretched, a mother for the newly arrived Tarnished. And a woman with her hands clasped together. Not seen anywhere else, she offered no libation, only prayer.
You know, it's said that Lord Radagon harbored a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erd Tree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
The famed sculptor came from here, and they knew that Radagon was Marika. Amongst these statues was a chest, and within was a golden prothesis once used by Millennia, the one-armed Valkyrie. A masterwork of craftsmanship. With practice and skill, it could be used as proficiently as a real arm. In the Black Swordsman's bloodlust, he forgot why he came to the Altus Plateau. To assist his traveling companion Melina, and to protect the one-armed woman, Millicent. When Malay Marai, Lord of the Shaded Castle, embraced this prothesis, he claimed to feel the presence of his personal goddess. House Mirai is ruined. Just desserts for falling for that severed harpy. No surprise that guilty cretin took the castle and our storied sword.
You again. A shame you had to see me like this. I had a bit of a slip-up, that's all. I should have stuck to what I know best. No matter. I know I can trust you. Gullible, yes, but a good soul. Make certain that Tanith gets this. Oh, it's nothing, it's just... makes me sick to see her all bent out of shape. Come on, Tanith, back on your high horse where you belong.
Amongst the statues, the Black Swordsman looked at the castanets used by dancers from foreign lands. The dance comprises no seductiveness, but merely a dignified beauty. Tanith was here at this castle, before she met Rykard, before she pushed him to becoming the Serpent. She was here, amongst the statues. In a feasting hall decorated by the armor of Cleanrot Knights and the prothesis of the one-armed Valkyrie, where royals and nobles from the world over would be dined and entertained, the bell-bearing hunter stood, enraptured by a painting of the blade of Miquella. In his hand was the storied sword of House Mirai, their executioner's sword, a blade that removed many heads from many necks for many generations. After the bell-bearing hunter was wrapped in iron briars for his crime, he was sentenced to death. But he was able to snatch the sword and furnished it with the battle skills from his home Eocat. He transformed it into a dancing sword. The chain coif beneath his neck was covered in blood. The execution didn't fail. Like the Mausoleum Knights of the Eclipse and the Scions of the Eternal, Elamar of the Briar had his head removed so he could continue to serve his master in death. He could become the bell-bearing hunter. The Black Swordsman's spirit calling bell jingled with the last swing of his massive sword, and so the hunter was no more. At the request of his friend, he would return the castanets to Rykard's consort. While the Black Swordsman began to depart, he noticed something odd. Out in the distance, a field of statues, all shattered. There, a guardian golem laid, like where he had found the Blue Dancer's charm. And approaching the Black Swordsman was a gaunt figure in official's robes, a black mantle across their shoulders, and a silver mask adorned with white hair. He attacked with a rapier fashioned from the spurs of a giant ant. Scarlet rot dripped from the blade. The Black Swordsman crushed the man's frail frame. His bones cracked and splintered from his emaciated skin. This was Malay Mirai, the head of House Mirai. Like all sons of House Mirai, they were all sickly born, their bodies of that of boys and not men. It was little wonder that Malay would be so beguiled by the beautiful and fierce goddess who was born into Rot. Scarlet Rot was an old legend, for which Malay was a private believer, Melania becoming his own personal goddess. The mask was a sleek silver. Its features looked that of a young woman's. White braided hair decorated the crown. The Mirai family had a dual history spanning generations, serving as both executioners and castellans of the Shaded Castle. This arcane mask bore the likeness of the first of their line. The Black Swordsman looked deep into the mask, and it reached out into him and weighed the soul inside of him. The silver face seemed alive, moving, like mist rising up from a waterfall at night, when the rocks vanish and the lights vanish, and there is nothing in the world but you, and the falls, and the mist. In those mists, the Black Swordsman saw things. Visions, swift glimpsed and then gone. There was a cruel intelligence peering out of those mists, but there was a beast as well, dark and frightening, chained and angry, raging at the fog, laughter and loneliness and cruel passion. This arcane mask bore the likeness of Miquella. He became dizzy, his heart raced and his body trembled. The ground met him quickly as his skull was being crushed under the weight of intense dread until he let out a cry. A silent cry. One that squeezed all the life and will from a body and mind. A cry of pain, a cry of help, a cry no one could hear. The eternally young Empyrean had been executioner. He was seducer. He was secret keeper. He was hunter of bell bearings, of the tarnished. He cultivated rot. He broke the world. He controlled the Black Swordsman. It was Miquella. It was always Miquella. He was killing for Miquella. He was a murderer for Miquella. He was just a monster for Miquella. The Black Swordsman was only here for Miquella.
Hello? Is someone there? Would you donate any Shabriri grapes in your possession to me?
Chapter 4. The Mimic Who Sold the World. In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing but the one great. All that there was, all that there could be, was together within the one great. Then there came fractures. With fractures came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, order and chaos. The Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the lands between, which would later become the Elden Ring. It would become order. The primordial form of life was chaotic. It was a crucible that blended scale, feather, wing, and horn all together. But from order and chaos came births, and then came souls. But the Greater Will would make a mistake. There was also torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, everyone born of order and chaos. When the Erd Tree flourished, a terrible prophecy was born. Sometimes, prophets would glimpse it within their faith. They would see the anathema to the Erd Tree. They would see a tree of candles, lit aflame in a surreptitious prophecy of cardinal sin. They would see the burning of the Erd Tree. They would see the kindling burst into flame, bringing ruin. They would see the one who walked alongside the flame that would bring ruin, and they would see them meet the road of destined death. This was the first cardinal sin. Yet men would follow that road just the same. One was a champion of beasts, and he was fit to be a lord, for that was what he was. Until his maiden threw herself into the fire, till she became kindling. Then the truth was laid bare. He was not fit to be lord, and he retreated to blasphemy, to hate. One was a knight of blood, who walked many a road drenched in blood, yet he would never consider himself a champion. Until his maiden threw herself into the fire, until she became kindling. Then the truth was laid bare. He was a champion after all, and he stayed by the side of his burned maiden. Another was a knight of the Round Table Hold, and he was the closest to becoming Elden Lord. Through the guidance of grace, he was brought together with his maiden. Through his strength, he was loved by dragons. Only those loved by dragons could survive the ordeal of clouding themselves in their lightning, and of all the knights, the Knight of the Round Table was the one Lanciax loved the most. But when he learned what it took to become Lord, the sacrifice he would have to make, he traveled far below the capital and was scorched by the flame of frenzy. His entire body was marred by repulsive burns that tormented him from within. Did he make his choice for one of his maidens? Or did some other force lure him with suggestion? Ah, Lord Vike, it seemed that you were no lord after all. Then where is he? Our true lord, our lord of frenzied flame. We beg of you, incinerate all that divides and distinguish. Ah, may chaos take the world. The Black Swordsman had no maiden. He was maidenless. All he had was black iron armor, thinly painted with blood, and a coarse iron lump he called a great sword. But when he washed up in that stranded gravesite, the place where he was sure to die, he was found by a young woman. She was someone who set off into the world to confront her fate. On the back of a spectral steed, she left the Black Swordsman a flask filled with a gift of rejuvenation, to seek the Elden Ring. The young woman was no maiden, but she could play the role. She could take runes from the shattered Elden Ring and turn it into strength. With runes, she could make him stronger. She could make him smarter. She could make him better. All he would have to do was bring her along with him on his journey, wherever it might take him. As long as he would take her to the foot of the Erd Tree, she would turn runes to strength. The Black Swordsman would rest his hand on hers and then share with her. Share his thoughts. Share his ambitions. Share the principles he would follow. The Black Swordsman would have to share his most intimate thoughts with her. He would have to lay himself bare, and no matter what, she would make him stronger. She would make him smarter. She would make him better. No matter what the Black Swordsman did, no matter where he went, no matter who he was, she would always turn his runes to strength. It was her power to give, and it was her power to take away. Sometimes, she would appear and share something of the past. She would share the history of the lands between. She would share something of herself. Seldomly did she appear. Seldomly did she share a part of herself. She was always there, always watching. The Black Swordsman would run headfirst into danger. He would batter his body. He would swing his sword. The Black Swordsman would confront the world in his black iron armor, thinly painted with blood. His massive lump of iron he called a great sword. All because she was there. All because she could turn his runes into strength. All he had to do was bring her to the foot of the Erd Tree.
Forgive me. I've been testing you to see whether or not grace truly does guide you, and whether you are fit to face the challenge that entails. It seems my worries were unfounded. Torrent had your measure from the very start, whereas I merely pretended.
She would even bequeath him a delicate gold work ring, one that could be used as a finger whistle. The sound of the whistle would summon Torrent, the spectral steed. The spectral steed who chose the Black Swordsman. The spectral steed who brought her to him. The spectral steed whose former master was none other than the young Empyrean, Miquella.
The Erd Tree is close. Only a little further till the foot of the Erd Tree. And the accord is fulfilled. It takes me back. I was born at the foot of the Erd Tree, where Mother gave me my purpose. Though now, everything is lost to me. I have to ascertain for myself the reason for which I live, burned and bodiless.
Leyendell was the golden capital at the base of the Erd Tree. It was said that the Erd Tree was once as warm as the gentle sun, and would gradually heal all who bathed in its rays. When the age of the Erd Tree began,
Blessings would drip from its golden boughs, and it was said that Queen Marika herself would personally bestow them upon the recipients. These sacred tears were used to spread the faith. The blessings of the Erd Tree would be worshipped in the churches of all lands in reenactment of the divine scene that had occurred at the base of the Golden Tree. When the Erd Tree's old sap became amber, it would be the most treasured and precious jewels in the age of Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, its primordial life energy residing inside. The grace of gold would bless those with eyes of the most vivid coloration. But this would not last forever. That age of plenty swiftly came to a close, and as the Erd Tree became more an object of faith, its once beautiful city fell to ruin. The streets were filled with ash, desperate men, mad knights, and depraved perfumers. The great ancient dragon Grandsax, who had once rained calamity upon the royal capital, was draped across the skyline, a reminder of the death and destruction that came when their once impenetrable walls fell, that even here in this gilded cage, they were not safe from the horrors that war could bring.
My utmost thanks for bringing me to the base of the Erd Tree. Here, I can govern my own movement, and thus, the accord is fulfilled. I shall depart to ascertain the purpose I was given. Farewell. I shall leave Torrent, and the power to turn runes into strength. Here, with you. I wish you luck in realizing your ambition. You have fought long and hard. I have no doubt you will become Elden Lord. May you take the throne.
It was her power to give, and it was her power to take away. And she left that power with the Black Swordsman so he could realize his ambition. On the branches up towards the throne of Elden Lord, guardians in engraved golden garbs and golden masks sat in prayer. In accordance with an ancient pact with the Erd Tree, their deaths would not lead to destruction, but instead to renewed, eternal life as guardians. The blood-red flowers blooming on their backs, thick with swollen veins, mark the senescence of their ancient pact. Perhaps they were part tree already. Perhaps their blood and the trees were one and the same.
Graceless, tarnished. What is thy business with these thrones? Ah, Godric the Golden. The twin prodigies, Miquella and Malenia. General Radahn, Praetor Rykard, Luna Princess Rani, willful traitors, all. Thy kind are all of a piece. Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition. Have it writ upon thy meager grave. Felled by King Morgoth, last of all kings.
Morgoth, the veiled monarch and fell omen, was curse-born. As a baby, he was kept underground, unbeknownst to anyone, imprisoned for eternity. Shackles bathed in golden magic bound him to the earth, so for as long as the Erd Tree stood, so too would he be chained. But when death roots spread through the land, and the golden tree became tarnished, the power of grace waning, Morgoth was freed. Though born one of the Grace's omen, Morgoth took it upon himself to become the Erd Tree's protector. He loved not in return, for he was never loved, but nevertheless, love it he did. During the Shattering, when all was in chaos, he took it upon himself to take the throne, as the rightful Lord of Leyndell. He would wear a ragged fur cloak, and go out onto the battlefields, in secret, as the fell omen, and become a horror to those who harbored ambitions for the Erd Tree, or for lordship. Though a cursed blood ran through his veins, his great rune showed it true, that the Omen King was born of the golden lineage, that he was indeed the rightful Lord of Leyndell. When the fight was over, the once proud and powerful fell omen was nothing more than a shriveled husk. He was nothing more than a sad old man.
Tarnished. Not but a fool. The Erd Tree wards off all who deign approach. We are all forsaken. None may claim the title of Elden Lord. Thy deeds shall be met with failure. Just as I.
Hello again, old friend. Allow me a moment to converse with you. You were unable to enter the Erd Tree, no? Prevented by the mantle of barbs. The thorns are impenetrable, a husk of the Erd Tree's being that spurns all that exists without. The only way to stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord is to pass the thorns. My purpose serves to aid in that very act. So I'd like you to undertake a new journey with me to the Flame of Ruin, far above the clouds, upon the snowy mountaintops of the giants. Then I can set the Erd Tree aflame and guide you down the path to becoming Elden Lord.
You managed to return. You know what this means. The Erd Tree has spurned you. The fingers remain still, shaken by this turn of events. They are busy consulting the greater will. When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of of moons must first pass. No matter for me. But you... how will you ever manage to wait? Oh my... heavens forbid. That is not the domain of mere men. The burning of the Earth Tree is the first cardinal sin. And you say you seek the power of the Rune of Death too? The Rune of Death goes by two names. The other is Destined Death. The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation. Unleashing the rune now would be unthinkable. The Fingers would never permit it. Nor would the Greater Will. But here we are. The Fingers dormant, severing our link to the Greater Will. The realm and all life in ruins. Impossible events transpire beyond the ken of the Fingers. Who is to say that the cardinal sin must be cardinal forever? Go on. Finish the job. Take the course you deem most worthy. You must find kindling. Only the smoldering flame in the great forge of the giants on the highest peak in the lands between can burn the Earth Tree. But special kindling is required to reignite the flame. For the flame to burn the Earth Tree, a sacrifice is needed. Of one who envisions the flame and can lead you to the Rune of Death.
Think not of the kindling. I shall see to that. All I ask of you is to make the journey to the snowy mountain tops of the giants, far above the clouds. I know I'm asking you to commit a cardinal sin, but it must be done to reach the path beyond. And that is the path I wish to travel. What is your mind?
Up in the snowy mountains, the Black Swordsman ran into a man he had met before. Or so he thought. The man looked like the hunter, yet under his iron casa, he was covering his eyes, as if he did not want the world to see his tears.
The Tarnished, who would be Lord, oh my. Why the long face? I fear that you were previously acquainted with this vessel. Well, that is most unfortunate. For he is dead. As for his flesh, he gave it to me. Shabriri, I hope you can make your peace with that. Chosen Tarnished and would-be Lord, dare to tread the path of true rigor. Spare the poor girl, and singe your own flesh in her stead. If you are prepared to show resolve, and attain lordship through righteous hardship, then heed the words of I, Shabriri.
It is said that the man named Shabriri had his eyes gouged out as punishment for the crime of slander, and with time, the blight of the flames of frenzy came to dwell in the empty sockets.
There is something I'd like to say. My purpose was given to me by my mother, but now I act of my own volition. I have set my heart upon the world that I would have, regardless of my mother's designs. I won't allow anyone to speak ill of that, not even you.
Before the summit of the mountain was a large fort. Coiled thorns towered above. They looked as giant swords made to punish the wielder. Wooden barricades that were erected hastily were now collapsing into the pristine snow. Grasping at smoldering, withered saplings, exiled criminals faced the forge in the distance. Yet they saw nothing. These guilty sinners had their eyes gouged out by thorns and lived in eternal darkness. In that darkness, they discovered the Blood Star, and by flagellating themselves with the thorns of punishment, they could send a trail of blood thorns to impale others, to punish others. Up on this distant northern mountaintop, the Giant's Flame still smoldered in its forge. The Giant's Flame is the flame of ruin, capable of burning the Erd Tree. And so, following the war against the Giants, its ruinous blaze was sealed, and the fire monks were appointed to watch over it. Their weapons were of heavy battle hammers and curved swords, both made to resemble the motif of a flickering flame, a reflection for their fiery combative spirit. They wore heavy black iron armor adorned with a red cloth, their grotesque face of the corrupt ancient god of flame sculpted on the chest. But taboos transform into lasting obsessions by virtue of the fear that they inspire, and though charged with keeping watch over the flame, after many years of solemn duty, they had succumbed to its allure. Fire beguiles those who gaze into it, and so the guardians of the flame were also its worshippers. The prelates who commanded the monks were here as well. The weighty frame of their armor symbolized the onus of their grave vows as guardians. "Etch this sign upon thy breast, of my thunderous gravity," one was claimed to have said. In hand were colossal hammers with the appearance of rolling flames, its heft representing the weight of their guardianship. Their helms were engraved with a sacred countenance and housed a cauldron. It was said that it was originally furnished with embers and would surge into flames when the wearer's faith reached its zenith. Concerned over the lazy arrogance with which the monks treated the flame, a prelate named Byrak severed his own head as a lesson to others, intending it to be used as a candle stand. To this day, his faith has continued to smolder from within the cranial vessel. Up above, watching over the monks and prelates, was their ruler, wearing a mask that illustrated the quality of an ideal lord, Arganathi, chief guardian of the flame. He held a tricksome shield made from white stone, depicting the malformed one-eyed god. The barrel of a firearm poked through the open mouth. Once worshipped by the giants, this evil deity was believed to have been slain by Queen Marika. Arganathi wore the robes of an official, but draped over his shoulders were the black mantle, customarily worn by the head of House Mirai. It was always Miquella. He was guarding a prayer book that held secret incantations that only a few prelates knew the existence of. "Flame, fall upon them. Giant's flame, take thee." And one that Arganathi Mirai had wished to keep secret, until it was stolen by Adon. Arganathi Mirai had wished to keep secret that the fell god still lurked within the fire giants. He had wished to keep secret that Marika did not slay the fell god. In ancient times, the giants were mortal enemies of the Erd Tree. Their bellowing roars desolated nature, triggered avalanches, and whipped up storms of flame. Until Lord Godfrey came. With the strength of lords, he crushed and decimated the giants. The path to the forge was a path of the most graven sin man could commit. It was the path of violence, of hate, of war. It was the path the Black Swordsman followed, to reach the forge, to reach the flames.
We're almost there. The flame of ruin lies just ahead. I'm glad it was you I traveled with. I must tender my thanks to Torrent, too. Thank you, Torrent. Please continue to lend your aid. Till the end.
In the distance he stood, magnificent, beautiful, imposing, terrifying, and alone. The Black Swordsman rode towards him, with a coarse iron lump used to slaughter even inhuman foes. An avalanche ruptured in front of him, and Torrent rode off into a spectral mist. The cracking of twigs could be heard from inside the Black Swordsman's chest. He took a swig from his flask, and the strength returned to his body, but the pain didn't fade. The skin on the giant's legs and arms were flayed. Bone could be seen beneath the giant's red braids. The giant reached inside his own chest and pulled forth the flame of the fell god. The Black Swordsman's black iron burned at his underclothes and skin. The scent of cooked meat came up towards him as the taste of blood sat in his mouth. Massive swings broke his composure. His muscles twinged and tore. The Black Swordsman grit his teeth and... A great red and terrible eye looked down at him in waves of malice and rage. The very ground beneath his feet erupted in pillars of hellfire. The giant reached into the mouth of his god, but Torrent would always be there when called. The mountain was shaking as the end of the world billowed out from the fell god's mouth. It was so hot and terrible, but the Black Swordsman kept fighting. He would not stop fighting. The pain was intense, and his flask was nearly empty. The eye. One more shot in the eye. The giant rolled, and the Black Swordsman followed the path, and... they both fell, but the Black Swordsman got back up. The fire giants borrowed power from a fell god, and still they were defeated. Yet their failure released them from a solitary curse, to serve as keepers of the flame for eternity. Marika had not slayed the fell god, but the Black Swordsman had. The forge wasn't far now. Melina and the Black Swordsman would both face their fates. The whole world was beneath them. All of his struggle had brought him to this point, at the peak of ruin, the forge that housed the flame.
I have long observed the lands between. This world is in dire need of repair and death. Indiscriminate.
As he sat down at the sight of Grace...
Are you ready to commit a cardinal sin? Very well. Let my hand rest upon you. For but a moment.
Melina took his hand into hers, like she had many times before, for the last time.
O Erd Tree, you shall burn. for the sake of the new Lord. Thank you for guiding me here. The one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the road of destined death. Goodbye.
To lead him down the road of destined death, to make him Elden Lord. What? No, that can't be. She's all I have. She's the only one by my side. Is that why Torrent brought us together? So you could take her away from me? So I can be alone? Is that why, Miquella? Is that why?
Chosen, tarnished, and would-be lord, descend into the depths far below the Erdtree capital. Seek audience with the three fingers and the flame of frenzy. If you inherit the flame of frenzy, your flesh will serve as kindling, and the girl can be spared, setting you on the righteous path of lordship, the path of the Lord of Chaos. Burn the Erdtree to the ground and incinerate all that divides and distinguishes. Ah, may chaos take the world. May chaos take the world.
It is said that the sickness of the flame of frenzy began with Shibriri, the most reviled man in all of history. In times past, every single person who attempted to control the flame of frenzy succumbed to madness after a desperate internal struggle. Those afflicted with the flame of frenzy would pluck out their own eyes in maddening pain and unstoppable tears. Maybe that is why they say to gaze into one another's eyes is truly the most intimate form of human contact.
So you're here as well, are you? I realized as we've talked, I'll be a maiden, and you, surely a lord. Go to the door ahead. After divesting yourself of your possessions, it will surely open, and the three fingers will welcome you. May the flame of chaos find purchase within you. If you intend to claim the frenzied flame, I ask that you cease. It is not to be meddled with. It is chaos, devouring life and thought unending. However ruined this world has become, however mired in torment and despair, life endures. Births continue. There is beauty in that. Is there not? If you would become Lord, do not deny this notion. Please, leave the frenzied flame alone. I ask you one more time, please, seek not the frenzied flame. As one who strives to become a lord, deny not the lives, the new births of this world. Those who would are not fit to be called lord, when the land they preside over is lifeless.
destined death.
Ugh, too much noise. I can't even sleep. Godo? Wipe that stupid look off your face. I hear you can't throw a rock without hitting a dead body down there. So what's so weird about seeing a half-dead old man or two? Plague? Nothing so special as all that. It's just old age. Old age. Just when I thought I'd have a quiet, peaceful death, the noisy idiot had to come back. Well, I get to see it before I die. Guess God's sympathetic after all. So, enough of the long-winded speeches. Let me see the sword in hand. Blade nicks, blood rust, bends. Shouldn't be this way even after 10 years. This is gonna take more than just a little elbow grease. You really make a blacksmith cry, you know that? I'm guessing you swing and shoot too often to eat or sleep. You can't stay sane forever fighting that way. Huh? Your face looks even more tense now than it did before. So if you didn't hate that much, you wouldn't be able to stand up, huh? 2 years ago, when Rickard rolled in here with the two of you busted up, I don't know what it was that happened to you all. Afterwards, when that monster came calling, I guess I had some clue what it could have been. So you're waging war against things like that. I can't even say that in itself is sane. But even if your reason is retaliation or revenge, ain't you just escaping to war, to hatred? What? Just listen. It's the ramblings of a dying old man. The thing about hatred, it's the place where people who can't look sorrow in the eye without wavering run off to. Vengeance is like soaking a blood-rusted sword in even more blood and sharpening it. You sink the blade called your heart deep into blood in order to fix the nicks called sorrow. The more you sharpen, the more it rusts, so you sharpen it again. In the end, all that's left is a pile of rust and scraps. Now come on, it ain't like you to lecture. You telling me to become a blacksmith or something? I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to. You got some huge nicks in your heart. Damn cracks called fear, running all through it. You don't know. You don't understand. In this cozy place, you're about to die with nothing left behind to regret. You don't get it. No one, no human understands that. They died. No one was left. None of it made any sense. Suddenly, unfairly, like bugs, without understanding anything. They were all young. They could have done something if they lived. But still, in an instant, to me, they're irreplaceable. You abandoned those irreplaceable things. You went alone. On that day 2 years ago, in your hopeless suffering, you left the last irreplaceable things you had and went away by yourself. You were right beside those irreplaceable things, yet you couldn't bear to immerse yourself together in sorrow with them. So instead, you ran away so that your own malice could burn within you. Am I wrong? Do you have any place criticizing Rickard who stayed here? Do you have any place talking about revenge for your friends? Or you're the one who went off abandoning that girl here? When push comes to shove, you go and choose to be alone and rely on fighting. You're like a drawn sword on the battlefield, one of the countless nicks soaked in blood and rusting, with a lethal crack in it, a sword that's begun to break.
There was always a choice. It was always his choice. To run away was his choice. To be alone was his choice. To hurt was his choice. If he was going to push on, he would have to choose to keep pushing on. If he was going to fight, he would choose to fight for someone. It wasn't the armor he wore or the weapons in his hands that made him. It was his choices that made him. And there was always a choice. And in this moment, he chose to be the Black Swordsman. Chapter 5. The Black Swordsman. In my anger, in my grief, I chose to run away. You were right by my side the entire time. And when you asked me to be by yours, I ran. I have been struggling for so long that I thought I was alone. But you were there, struggling in silence, struggling next to me. You knew you had to make the ultimate sacrifice, yet chose to push on. And all you asked was for me to be by your side. You gave me the strength of runes, but you are stronger by far. And that is why I'll keep fighting. Why I will keep struggling. Because you gave me something worth fighting for. I'm not giving up on you. Burned and bodiless you may be, you still live. And so do I. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm done running away. We're in this together. It's time to face Miquella at the base of the Halig tree. He will have the answers we seek. I'll make sure of it. The Black Swordsman was ready. But what of the undefeated swordswoman, Melania the Severed?
I should like to meet her. This vanished woman. Again we meet. I can only surmise our purposes are aligned. In which case, allow me to explain myself. I am of Melania's blood, but in what capacity I know not. I could be sister, daughter, or an offshoot. Whatever the case, though, I am certain of a kinship between us.
Oh, Millicent. Finding herself, is she? The words of a true innocent, the dear girl. Well, perhaps this is just as it should be. Little Millicent following in the steps of her mother, no matter what. This is their fate, after all.
The interior of the Halig tree was massive and hollow. Reliefs and statues of a man with a staff decorated the walls. He was a man who looked as if he demanded respect, and earned it. A massive pool of rot flowed down to the base of the tree. From here, the roots could be seen clearly. Miquella would be there. The rot here, though, was different. The Black Swordsman had seen what life came from rot, but he had seen nothing like this. This rot was clean. Beautiful white flowers covered the ash-colored branches. They swam in the rot and blossomed into something more, something magical. The air was different as well. It didn't hold him down or suffocate him. The Black Swordsman felt light. He felt free. He felt as if anything was possible. And dancing above it all were luminous, ethereal butterflies. He tried to reach out and touch them. They would not be caught. Not by him. Not by anyone. The Black Swordsman felt something inside. Something he hadn't felt for a long time. Looking at these untouchable butterflies, he felt joy. Although he could not have them, he was lucky to just have seen them. The kindred of rot were here too. The witless pests who prayed to rot as if it were a god. 2 messages were written on the ground. Tears ran down the sage's face.
I didn't notice you there. Welcome. How may I help you? My apologies, though. You hardly needed to see me like that. Oh, it's just... I realized that I'd soon be saying my goodbyes to Millicent, and my eyes began to well. She is to meet them very soon, her sisters, And when she does, she'll be defeated, surely, and begin to flower. Which is why, if you happen to be present for the girl's fight with her sisters, I ask that you side with the sisters and kill Millicent. It must be done by your hand, no other. Millicent trusts you, rather deeply in fact. Sever that trust. Nurtured by betrayal, her bud will flower most vividly. When Melania ascends to godhood, Millicent too shall be reborn, as a scarlet Valkyrie.
There was always a choice.
You can't tell me you don't wish to see it? The superior bud that is Millicent becoming the finest of flowers? I beg of you, kill her with your own two hands.
And he chose to be the Black Swordsman.
We shall meet again, as many times as it takes for you to understand.
Millicent's 4 sisters were born in the swamp of Aeonia, and came to the Halig tree under the aegis of the sage, and yet they were doomed to never blossom.
Hello. Thank you for lending your hand. Without your help, I could not have defeated that quartet. I feel as if I've been in your debt from beginning to end. Thank you. With your help, I was able to live as my own person. If only in passing. But this is where things end. I paused to even tell you, but I took out the needle myself.
Although the intrinsically crafted needle of unalloyed gold forestalled the rotting sickness, she chose to remove it from her body. She would choose to die and rot away, rather than bloom into something she wasn't. It was her choice to continue to struggle for someone else.
Tell whoever put you up to this that if I am to flower into something other than myself, I would rather rot into nothingness as I am. Please, let me pass alone. The scarlet rot writhes now, worse than ever. Soon, I won't be more than a mound of flesh, curse-laden. Untouchable. I wouldn't want such a thing to bring you harm.
And although she had removed it from her flesh, it bore no trace of befouled blood. Instead, it was faintly moist with dew. Perhaps she was able to cure the rot with the needle after all. It was time. He would return the needle to Melania for Millicent. He would attempt to help the Twin Empyrean for a friend. He would confront Miquella for the truth, for answers, for Melina. And it was his choice. The Black Swordsman took a memento to remember his friend, an insignia that depicted a rotted winged sword. But when he went to place it into his talisman pouch, he noticed there was something already there. A hand that used to be part of a golden prothesis, locked into a fist. How did that get there, he wondered. Out of the drainage channel and over the roots, he saw what appeared to be a church and a graveyard that flanked it from both sides. One side filled with the mourning and the dead, the other with rot and rebirth. The roots were ahead, but there was something else. That same man, holding the staff, emerged from the walls. Coffins, made of stone, to protect the dead from the roots. and a magnificent scarlet Aeonian flower, the butterflies kissing its petals. At the base, discarded clothes, light yet sturdy, worn by young women who set off into the world to confront their fate. This could have been Millicent's fate, if it wasn't for the Black Swordsman. She could have become something else through no choice of her own. There was always a choice, the Black Swordsman thought. Golden mist tumbled down in front of him, dreamlike and surreal. He traversed it. The roots were ahead. But they were a husk, a gaping hole, as if a mother had her womb ripped out. In the field of flowers beneath the roots, Malenia sat, sleeping. She looked at peace. The Black Swordsman approached to return it to her, her dignity, her needle. But before he could, Miquella spoke, through the wind and the leaves.
I dreamt for so long. My flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Corpse after corpse left in my wake. As I awaited his return. Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
Malenia, I don't want to fight, I just want to talk, he pleaded. I am not your enemy, please, I can explain. The rot, it affects your memory, you don't remember. I can help you look for Miquella. She would not subsist. Fine, if you will not relent, then you leave me with no choice. Let's dance. And there, in a field of flowers, beneath the roots of Miquella's divine halig tree, swordsman fought swordswoman. Though she was blind and her body was mostly rotted away, her attacks were stronger than any the Black Swordsman had ever encountered. With each drop of blood the Black Swordsman shed, his body would weaken, but Malenia would be invigorated. Each cut flowed one after the other. Her war protheses wove slashes, stabs, and strikes like a gentle river. But then the river raged, and she began to dance. Hopping across the water, her terrible blade flashed. It cut left, slashed right. The river was coming for the Black Swordsman. The blind swordsman taught her well. They sealed the rot, but unleashed a Valkyrie. His flask gave him the will to keep fighting. Melina gave him the strength to persist. With sheer force of will, he put everything he had into that coarse lump of iron. The fight was over. He had slain the undefeated swordswoman. As she collapsed, melancholy washed over him. He failed to return the needle. He failed his friend's dying wish. And he would fail Melina as well. Miquella was not here. The roots were nothing but a husk. He would either have to choose to lose Melina, or to burn down the whole world with him. He would have to choose to.
Wait.
Each time the scarlet flower blooms, Malenia's rot advances. Once it bloomed and brought down an old dynasty. Then it bloomed and kept the stars in stasis. The Black Swordsman was fighting the blade of Miquella no more. It had bloomed once again, and now he fought the goddess of rot, her wings made of butterflies.
The scarlet bloom flowers once more.
he did not have to fight alone. He was never truly alone. The spirit calling bell jingled lightly in his hand, and a small piece of himself was taken away, and then it took shape. It took the shape of the Black Swordsman. It looked just like the Black Swordsman. It wore black iron armor, and it swung its sword just like the Black Swordsman. In this moment, he was the Black Swordsman, and they fought together. The mark of a true lord? Was she testing me? For Miquella?
Dear Miquella. Oh, dearest Miquella. My brother. I'm sorry. I finally met my match.
The Black Swordsman felt it, all at once. First, his body absorbed her great rune, and although it was half-rotted, her spirit of resistance was infused into it. He knew this great rune should have been the most sacred of all. Then, he remembered, like it was always there, in the back of his mind. The remembrance of the rock goddess. This was how he knew. Miquella and Malenia are both the children of a single god. As such, they are both Empyreans, but suffered afflictions from birth. One was cursed with eternal childhood, and the other harbored rot within. Years and days are alike to one who has lived a life eternal. Miquella had seen the rise and fall of empires. He saw all the great wonders that man could create turn to dust and ruin just for it all to be built again. This was how he possessed the wisdom, the allure of a god. This was how he was the most fearsome Empyrean of all. He had never grown up. He never became a man. This boy had witnessed men live and die and live and die and live and die. He had seen it all from the eyes of a child. All the while, his sister was in agony, in pain, being eaten away from the inside. Men would be born, live, and die. The pain they felt was but for a moment. But for Malenia, her pain would never end. She would rot, and she would never die. The battle had taken much out of the Black Swordsman, and his mind was racing trying to keep up with Miquella. He needed to rest. When he awoke, he saw it. Beautiful and magnificent. The scarlet flower had bloomed. Miquella couldn't cure his sister with Golden Order fundamentalism, so he abandoned it. Instead, it was going to be me. Miquella used me to cure his sister, the Black Swordsman thought. He went to place the needle on the flower, for Millicent, for Malenia. Then, before his very eyes, the needle began to transform. It became root and twig, braid and spiral. It was life, it was wonder, it was bewitching. He touched it and knew. Capable of subduing the flame of frenzy if inherited, allowing one to cheat fate and avoid becoming the Lord of Frenzy. However, the needle is as yet unfinished and can only be used in the heart of the storm beyond time said to be found in Farum Azula. Even Miquella feared the power of a man with nothing left to lose. You knew I would come here, to return the needle. You knew I would do this for Millicent, for Melina. You knew I would make the right choice, eventually. All of it, everything. Ronnie and the Night of the Black Knives, Deathroot and the Death of the Erd Tree, Renala, Radigan, the Amber Egg, Tanith and Rykard, the Den of Recusants, the Star Scourge, the Falling Stars, the Wasteland of Rot. Every dream and every nightmare. All of it linked in a chain of relations, all of it eventually converging here. But causality and regression wasn't enough. This is why you abandoned Golden Order fundamentalism. You needed chaos. You needed me. You needed me to choose. This is what you want from me, isn't it? You want me to bring you this needle? Is that why you had me walk this bloody path? You want me to finish what you started? You want me to save her? So then, Miquella, where are you? It was then that the Black Swordsman realized where only Miquella could have gone.
Oh, Lambkin, so pleased you're here. I wish to anoint you a proper inductee. A knight to serve Luminary Moog, the Lord of Blood, and establish a new dynasty. Luminary Moog has strength, vision, and of course, love. So, what do you say, my lambkin? Now, take this for your final trial. Soak the cloth with a maiden's blood. Since you are maidenless, the blood of anyone's maiden will do.
It turns out, after all this time, Varai did offer the guidance he sought.
Oh, good heavens. Clench your teeth or something. Never forget that feeling of agony, for it is what binds you to Luminary Moog, to all of us. You have the sweetest scream, my lambkin. Oh, another thing. You should have this. A medal granted by the new Mogwin dynasty, with the power to grant audience with Luminary Moog. But you mustn't use it just yet. The meeting must wait until the Mogwin dynasty commences. Luminary Moog yet slumbers beside the divinity.
But the Black Swordsman was never a patient man. It was dark. He lit his lamp and was in a cave. Then he saw it. Mogwin, the seat of the Lord of Blood, built on the stacked stone of a dead dynasty, surrounded by the bones of the earth, the false sky of the Nox hanging overhead, and the stumps of white petrified trees. Poor Albinaurics waited in anguish for communion with the accursed blood, so they may feel the sweet pain of belonging, of being loved. The swamp was full of festering blood. Bloody excrement of carnivorous beasts littered the land. Mixed inside of the half-digested flesh, dense with colonies of blood-fly eggs, writhed and squirmed. Their maggots fed on the blood and waste and turned into vicious little creatures with pitiable short lives. But even in the darkest pit and dankest mire, beauty could be found, and blood-slick roses bloomed in the festering blood. Those who served the Lord of Blood were quite fond of these. They were fond that even in their depravity, beauty could be found. The Black Swordsman had fought his apparition on his way deep below the capital, when he was at his lowest and darkest. He saw Moog, the Lord of Blood, and this was to be his dynasty. Moog was an omen, the son of Godfrey and Marika, and twin brother to the veiled monarch Vorga. As a child, his accursed blood summoned evil spirits that assailed him with rabid fervor. In his sleep, they would haunt him. Saint Trina did not just bring dreams with sleep. She could also bring nightmares. In his despair, in his anguish, Moog met the formless mother, deep underground. His accursed blood erupted with fire, and he found devout love for the wretched mire that he was born into far below the earth. He would finally love himself. The Black Swordsman made it past the Albinaurics mimicking Tibia mariners and found the corpse of a poor explorer. He had a map. In the lightless depths in this grave of an ancient civilization, it is here that Moog, the Lord of Blood, is building his palace to be the seat of his coming dynasty named Mogwin. His seat directly beneath Caelid, directly below the heart of Aeonia. This was how the Sovereign Alliance rotted from within. From this bloody conspiracy, Miquella bewitched Moog through nightmares and dreams to bring him here, beneath the Star Scourge. Melania searched for her brother. She searched in her dreams, and corpse after corpse was left in her wake. The blood of war sunk deep into the earth and pooled in this shallow grave. Melania didn't fail to kill Radahn. She did exactly what Miquella needed her to. Fill the earth with blood, destroy his mind with rot, and lock the stars in stasis until the Black Swordsman was ready. The eccentric in the bearded mask would host a festival of war when the Black Swordsman arrived. It was always Miquella. The formless mother, the mother of truth, craved wounds, so Mohg kidnapped Tarnished and made them his bloody fingers, to kill for him, to cull or tempt competing Tarnished, to render up offerings of blood to their lord, to his consort, to Miquella. Mohg thinks Miquella is bringing him a dynasty, but the truth was, all he was bringing him was a man, in black iron armor, thinly painted with blood, and a coarse lump of iron, far too large to be called a sword. Light bled in at the end of the cave, and he saw a sight of lost grace, a sight of hope, a chance for a brief respite before the end of his journey. After he rested, the Black Swordsman pulled something from his pocket and dragged it across the ground in a rough hand. Don't give up. A relic of those who came before, left to help those who would come after.
Dearest Miquella, you must abide alone a while. Welcome, honored guest, to the birthplace of our dynasty.
The Black Swordsman didn't even attempt to tell Mohg that he would never receive a response from the eternally young Empyrean. He was a raving lunatic too lost in love. The Black Swordsman readied his blade for Melina. Mohg cut into the air and fire ruptured before his eyes. He reached deep into the formless mother and pulled incinerating blood flame. It burned and lacerated his flesh beneath his armor. The Black Swordsman did not feel a thing. He was focused. He was fighting for more than himself. Then, Mohg lifted his sacred spear and pierced the body of the formless mother. The mother of truth desire wounds, and great black terrible wings emerged from his back. The burning blood was everywhere. The Black Swordsman could not contend with a flying demon. But the spirits looked fondly on the Black Swordsman, and through their own pain and their own tears, they would help him. She was brave, for they were together, and they would bring an end to this dynasty of blood.
I can see it as clear as day. The coming of our dynasty. Morgwin.
The cocoon sat on the pelvis of a long-dead giant. Above them both, old men of the ancient dynasty watched. The Black Swordsman approached the withered arm, the needle firmly grasped in his hand, and spoke. I am here, Miquella. Not because you compelled me, but because I choose to be. I am here for her. That concludes our story. For now. I hope you learned something. You know, the funny thing about mimics is that they can be anything they choose. And sometimes they choose to put on that black iron armor, and they choose to carry that coarse iron lump, far too large to be called a sword, because they're angry, because they're lonely, because they're afraid. But sometimes they carry those burdens for someone else. Sometimes they choose to struggle because they know others need them to struggle. Because their struggle isn't the only one. Because they're not alone. Because no matter what, somebody needs them to struggle alongside them. Because they're also angry. Because they're also lonely. And because they're also afraid. Because we're all struggling. And we don't have to struggle alone. You want to know how I know this? Because sometimes I choose to be the Black Swordsman too. Here, let me show you.
No excuse I will destroy. Imitate or not enjoy. Evidence that I've been legit of what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything. No excuse I will destroy. Imitate or not enjoy. Evidence that I've been legit of what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything. No excuse I will destroy. Imitate or not enjoy. Evidence that I've been legit of what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything. You ready for any of the many bizarre facts? A bit of the rhythm and you're feeling the contact. I've done what I've had to do to improve, and you can tell me what you think about that, where you all at. I got a whole new thing to bring the fun. Put another with me in the rain, they leave it chunk. Nothing better than when next go down and up. Haven't I made this crystal clear enough? Hustle hard and I'm wide on the move in a room full of heads and a many point of views, and I'm sure to be another one that people don't approve of. I remind you every time I rhyme, you suck. Highly contagious, underrated. Make way for the mind of rhymes created. When every line's like running rubber on the pavement, what can I say? I'm nothing to play with. This is what I wrote for your dome to explode. Fitted ball cap and a dope rap song. In the zone with the chrome microphone is a lab rat with his backpack always on. No excuse I will destroy. Imitate or not enjoy. Evidence that I've been legit of what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything. No excuse I will destroy. Imitate or not enjoy. Evidence that I've been legit of what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything. Add a little bit of me, mix it with the drums, the economy of MCs, take another plunge. My name will evade your brain, a great thought, I'll raise stakes, eyes made in New York. Open your mouth and I hold it there, like windmills spinning vivid in the open air. It just goes to show what you know for real. My flow's not even anywhere close to here. Amazed by the changes I've had to make to fascinate people like the half awake. If that's the case, still I got a lot to say, and my critical thoughts get tossed away as I blaze who lost faith in us to maintain enough to grow strength from things that unchanged. I'm making music or a brand new life, is my hand on your throat with a Rambo knife. You can take it to him when you wonder what it's like, how to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. No one can tell me what I'm doing is nice, and I'm feeling more than ever with a clear insight. A brand new school of rock has been made, rush the stages, frame the X-ray. A brand new school of rock has been made, rush the stages, frame the X-ray. No excuse I will destroy, imitate or not enjoy. Evidence that I've been legit of what's kept in dark cracks and crevices within. And I mean this truly yours. What is it that I become? Dwindling to nothing again and then filling up the ink pen with everything.
Julie.
young seedling, return to the bosom of earth, but remember well, thou art mine. So shall I give of myself. This is for thee, mine abundance, my drop of dew. Quench thy thirst throughout thy frame. Blossom and burgeon time and again, grow larger, stronger, until the day cometh when thou canst share in my dream. Elden ring, oh Elden ring, beget order most elegant from my tender reverie. If thou covetest the throne, impress my vision upon thine heart, the new world of thy making. All things will flourish, whether graceful or malign.